Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching second and final part of What If Kid Naruto accidentally goes to the realm of goddess. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no time. Let's start the story.
As Hinata returned, the girl covered her laughter with her hand. Her quick observation revealed that something was wrong with her blue-eyed partner. Naru.kun, are you okay? You look a little flushed. She stumbled over something solid as she approached. Naruto got up to try to catch her as she thrashed, attempting to regain her lost equilibrium, but instead collapsing onto her fellow nin. Mei started laughing when the two ended up in a tangled mess on the floor. When they opened their eyes, they turned red because they were inches from each other's faces. What made it even more complicated was the huge pile that Hinata felt she was sitting on, and the blonde twitched once before becoming too ashamed to move. Well, I gotta say, old enough to kill, old enough to screw, but I never would have thought you were the public types. The two leapt to their feet, straightening any loose garments while glaring at Mei, who was still laughing to herself a short distance away. With this round's winner decided, will Mikakushi Kurama and Choji Akamichi please come to the arena grounds? Everyone's attention was on the two genin who called, and as Mei turned to go, she looked back at them and said, "Wish me luck." She heard Ino shout, "Choji, kick this bimbo's tail," as she was leaving. "Blondie, you're going to want to watch this fight very closely," Mei said in a whisper loud enough for her to hear as she stopped directly beside her. The proctor could feel the emotions coming from the two genin as they stood there. Mei was idly gushing ki in waves, and poor Choji was a huge bundle of fear. The man sighed and jumped aside as he signaled the start of their match. "Come on Choji, you can do it. As much as I appreciate the support, you're the one who got me here in the first place," the boy thought, turning to face his friend and teammate. A little smile appeared on his opponent's face as he said, "Don't be too upset at your friend, fat boy. She just doesn't realize the situation for what it is." The boy's thoughts were interrupted by a giggle. Although the young Akamichi reacted angrily to the weight jab, the subsequent remark was undoubtedly salty if it was a wound. "Tell ya what, if you surrender now I'll take you out to one the high-end steak places. That way, you can fill your pudgy little frame to your heart's content." He lost his temper. The teenager screamed in rage as he collected his chakra in a vivid flash of blue and white, but his voice could be heard cursing fatness and disparaging his shinobi pride. In the stands, why'd she have to go and say that to him of people? As he spoke, the languid Shikamaru sitting by the railing caught the attention of the Junins seated together. Asuma asked, "What's wrong with that? I mean, insults are what people throw at one another all the time." "It's not just that. Choji has always been sensitive to being called chubby or fat, but it also sends him into a berserk rage whenever he hears anything insinuating a jab towards a person's overweight nature." Asuma pondered, that could be an issue then. If he's too blinded by anger, it'll hinder his ability to perform properly. The shinobi surrounding the boy displayed shocked expressions at this. She couldn't have done this on purpose, could she? Returning to the arena for a boy of his size, the boy's punches and kicks were extremely athletic, and he was rushing in her direction. As she giggled again, the mahogany-haired Kunoichi skillfully sidestepped and deflected every blow before jumping back to give herself space. "Wow, I figured you were soft against being insulted, Tubby, but I never would have guessed it would work this well. Choji, stop and think, you gotta eat." Ino's voice could be heard back in the viewport. When a hand pulled her back from the railing, she let out a startled cry and yelled, "What the hell Naruto? Why'd you do that?" as she realized who had done it. The blonde simply pointed to the roof, where a kunai was firmly rooted, without saying anything. Hinata responded on behalf of her teammate, "I believe she was warning you to stop talking and allow them to fight Ino.san because she intended to kill you." With a guffaw, the girl returned to the railing to observe in silence as her friend kept chasing his opponent around the stadium without cause. Nikuden Sensha. After tucking his head and appendages inside his enlarged body, the big preteen, took a deep breath as his torso swelled up like someone had inflated a balloon in his chest. He then started to roll toward Mei at a slightly faster pace. Both Ino and Shikamaru were thinking with astonished expressions on their faces up in the stands and booth. "Wow, I didn't think he was serious when he said he was training hard." As if the whole situation were humorous, Mei laughed a little bit throughout, and Naruto went back to his chair in the port. Naruto, what are you doing? The fights aren't over, and you have no Ray, Ino said, turning briefly to face the blonde. Actually, that fight was over from the start. What? I don't watch pointless fights, nor do I want to see Mei toying around with her opponent. To say that Ino was shocked would be an understatement of the year. She yelled at the other genin, W. How can you all have such little faith in your fellow genin for a girl who none of us even know? Before Sakura and Hinata arrived and sat down on the seats surrounding him and discussed a similar subject. The blonde man simply shrugged and smirked, saying, simply, you don't know me, none of you do. Winner. Mei Kurama, was the proctor's voice heard at that moment. With her eyes closed and a slight smirk on her face, the girl returned to the stands and whispered just loudly enough for Ino to hear as she walked beside her. If you interrupt my match like that again, next time, Naruto won't have an opportunity to save you. As the proctor yelled, this concludes the first round of the tournament, we will now move on to the second. Will Sakura Haruno and Kiba Inuzuka step out into the arena? She then made her way back to her seat. Kiba yelled as the two left that he would kick the Dobi's ass in front of everyone and that his fight would be simple. Sakura sighed, got up, and walked solemnly to the field. Sakura. Hi sensei. Don't beat on him too bad, the girl said, turning to see her blonde instructor sitting with a cunning smile. Only enough to put him in his place, the girl said with a smile. She left for her battle after receiving a nod from the Uzumaki. Are you ready? Cherry Blossom, dressed in black, nodded as her opponent snarled, yeah, I'm ready. Then, Hajime, the dog. User pulled his partner out and laughed as the man disappeared, saying, I won't even break a sweat. The boy responded to the pup's barks by saying, yeah, I know. But it's not like she's gotten any stronger. Don't care who they say he's worked with. The pup had been trained by that loser. While the boy was getting ready, Sakura stood there with her hair covering her face and her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Oi, ya no, before you were a freaking washboard. Now, you're a real babe, so how about if I win you go out on a date with me? And should you lose? She asked coolly as a tremor swept through her body and she looked at the blonde above her before turning back to face the unruly genin. If I lose? I'll be your slave for the rest of the week, not that that's likely. With a very naughty twinkle in her eye, the pinkett replied, deal. She drew a kunai and threw it all in one swift, fluid motion as soon as she finished speaking. Startled by the speed of the action, the two leapt away from each other, but as it passed between them, they sniffed and their eyes grew even larger. What is that? Chains of metal sprang from the ground beneath the puppy as it barked something to Kiba, but before anything could happen, the dog was held fast by all four paws. The ensuing explosion had suddenly thrown the two away from one another as Sakura flipped through a few hand seals and calmly called out, Haiden. Chirensa Sote. Akamaru, now, it's just you and me, mutt. Within the booth. Well, sensei, who is this Sakura girl? I've never seen that move before. According to the professor, she's a genin, and I'm not familiar with that either. You don't even know that. What did she create it then? The blonde Sanin asked in a startled tone. The elderly man grinned and shook his head, saying, no, but I think I know who did. Who? I'd like to meet them, Jiraiya inquired. You will, quite soon if my guess is right. The arena. Suga. Kiba roared as he rushed forward, launching himself into a sharp spiral. Once again, chains exploded from the ground, this time snapping the twisting ninja down face first. Sakura managed to get out of harm's way with a well-timed side leap, and his roars and growls of rage echoed throughout the arena as he attempted to break free from the jutsu. I won't collect on our agreement, Kiba, but next time, listen to your pup before doing something you end up regretting. Winner, Sakura Haruno. Will Suka Moreno and Kaide Tachibana please come to the floor? In the stands the shinobi, who had never heard of such a jutsu, were astounded, as was the audience. As the girl struggled, Might Guy, who was recovering, said to his associate, that was embarrassingly quick. Kakashi, have you ever heard of a technique like that before? The Junin sensei watched with wide eyes. As the Cyclops said, I can't see where the chains come from, it's as if they just originated from nowhere, his friend responded with a shake of the head. Now that's my kind of girl. That's a useful jutsu. I may have to ask her where she learned it, and see if she'll let me use. Talk about a great torture tool. Anko grinned broadly as she delivered her statement. With a shake of her head, her partner Kunoichi said, Anko. Anyway, that does look useful, I could find ways to use that myself. Observing the port as the battle broke out, Hinata, Naruto, and Mei watched with the other genin as the bubblegum girls schooled her opponents, and the shinobi blinked. A few of them cast suspicious looks at the blonde boy, recalling her earlier claim that he was her trainer. Tenten emerged with a puzzled look as the young Kunoichi returned to her friends and teacher. Yes, Tenten, you wanted to ask me something. Well, is what Mei said earlier true? And if so, just how strong are you? I mean, from what I've been hearing, Sakura was never that strong. No offense to her, but for her to get where she is. I don't really know how strong I am. That's what this contest is for me, and Sakura has gotten to where she is on her own. I've done nothing more than show her a few things. She is a valuable ninja, and a very hard worker. You may want to be careful, she might just give you a run for your money, the Uzumaki said, laughing out loud before responding to the girl's questions in a matter-of-fact manner. Will Naruto Uzumaki and Tenten Higasha proceed to the grounds? As they looked into each other's eyes, the two came to a halt and time seemed to slow down. While the blonde wore a simple smirk, Tenten's face took on an expression of shocked determination. After space caught up to them, Naruto whispered to his companion as they made their way to the stadium ring. I may just give you a run for your money as well. Those who were familiar with the two in front of them silently awaited the Genin sensei's demonstration of his abilities. As the proctor asked them, the brunette smiled and put her hands down in a quick draw position. With that, the fight started. The bun-haired Kunoichi launched 3 sets of shuriken and kunai in a flurry of motion, each aimed directly at its target. The boy's smile never left his face as he danced fluidly, skillfully navigating through the projectiles with the elegance of a professional dancer. He is competent. He hasn't even produced a weapon to protect himself. I can't let him play with me. I'm gonna make you take me seriously. The boy in front of her was still moving between them as she charged, continuing her shower of weapons. When she was close enough, she let out a cry and sprang into a flying jump kick, which was easily sidestepped when her opponent pulled out a kunai. She called forth a kusarigama and hurled it at him, the attack being redirected as the woman produced 2 scrolls. Observing the port, Neji, is that? Yes, she's going to use it. I'm surprised really. I thought she'd wait before resorting to that jutsu. Asking, hey, what do you mean? What is in those scrolls? Ino turned to face the elder Hyuga. The boy answered without turning his head, her greatest technique. The arena. When Naruto saw what Tenten had brought out, he arched an eyebrow and threw his kunai and pulled out his wakizashi in defense, thinking, well, this should be interesting. The girl set the scrolls down and leapt to the air, spinning as she unleashed her technique on the blonde, so Shoryu. As the scrolls released 2 spiraling dragons of smoke. As the boy sheaths his blade and performs a few hand seals while shouting, Futon. Keiskiri Bakuden no Jutsu. A hailstorm of summoned tools starts to fall upon him. Naruto gathered wind in his palm, formed a whirlwind, pressure air sphere, and hurled it forward. As soon as it was out of his grasp, it burst into dozens of wind waves that either destroyed or collided with the volley of weapons directed at him. The bun-haired Kunoichi was taken by surprise by the unidentified jutsu and knocked out of the air as the wind continued on its course. In a bridal-style carry, Naruto caught her as she fell before she hit the ground, and the proctor returned to the fold as he carried her out of the arena. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. Now, will these next 2 competitors come down? Neji Hyuga and Rock Lee. Stands. I can't believe it. That is the class dead. Last, he beat his opponent with 1 jutsu, and one that I've never heard of before either. Just like that Sakura girl. What is going on? Knowing the woman's connection to the genin, Kakshi turned slightly to find Yugo seated next to them and asked her what he wanted to know. Chan, just how are these genin performing techniques we've never seen before? A smile was etched on her lips as she spoke. Simple. Naruto.kun is a prodigy when it comes to creating jutsu, as is Hinata. Chan. So my guess would be that Sakura is learning from Naruto since she can use his Haiden technique. The boy who was thought to be the worst shinobi in his group turned out to be the most talented and inventive, leaving the Junin speechless. The world seemed to have been turned upside down. Brilliant. Naruto's flames of youth burn with a blazing passion of magnificence. Yosh. Shut it, guy. By the way, your other two genin are about to face one another, said a slightly irritated Anko. Booth, Ito, was that? Yes. That is his son, and he already knows who his parents are. As the knowledge he imparted to them began to sink in, both Sanin turned to their teacher. You mean that? A nod came before he finished saying, he lives in his father's home now, and has access to his rightful inheritance as well. You both are in for an interesting fight depending on whoever gets the opportunity to go up against him. Area of viewing Mei approached Lee before he leapt over the railing as the two so-called genin walked towards the floor. Hey, take this. Mei-san, what is it? Something that I want you to drink from only after the proctor begins the match. Think of it as a gift from me to you saying good luck and knock him out. Oh, okay, I will do as instructed. Thank you for your support. The arena. Are you two ready? Neji, this has been a dream of mine for a very long time. I want to fight you full out, no holding back. Why? You know you can't beat me. You have been destined to fail against someone of my strength, and I will merely prove it to you once more here. Begin. Kicks and punches blurred as the two parried, blocked, or countered each other's every move as they instantly swung into a collision. As the two continued, Neji's palm strike finally sent Lee backwards, causing him to skid to a stop at a distance of at least 2 meters. You see, Lee? I am never going to lose to you, fate has determined this. The bushy browed genin looked at the gourd in his hand in frustration and then, after a moment's hesitation, swallowed the contents 3 times. The boy let out a long sigh, stumbled a little with a hiccup, but threw the bottle away. A smile spread across his face and his cheeks flushed. Lee was inebriated. As he sank into a shaky stance, the now intoxicated teenager slurred, "Ya no, hiccup. I always thought you were a bit of a prick, Neji. Wedgie. You never showed hiccup. Either of us any respect above servants. Today, hiccup. That changes." In contrast, his teammate responded with a laugh when he saw the display being put on in front of him. Really? Fine, Lee, I'll take you up on that offer of yours. We fight all out, no holding back. Now, let me show where your place is. As he flew forward, the Hyuga genius struck him in the face with a palm strike, but the world abruptly turned and he was on the ground. What on earth was that, Kami? He found himself face first in the dirt once more, with a weight on his back that abruptly lifted as he looked to see Lee transition from a handstand to a relaxed slouching position. The brunette stood up and tried again, this time aiming for a swipe at the boy's ribs. Stands. How could this have happened? Guy had a startled and terrified expression on his face as the senseis turned to him. Kurenai asked, "Guy, what's wrong?" and expressed what the others were thinking. That stance. LL Lee isn't himself anymore. Then, in a rough voice, Anko said, "What are you talking about? Spit it out already." Lee's drunk. Yes. That we know, so what's the big deal? Kakashi now interrupted. You don't understand. Lee is highly susceptible to alcohol. And even the smell of it can turn him into a berserker that took me using 2 of the gates to subdue. And the stronger the drink, the deadlier he becomes. He's a natural, born drunken boxer. If Might hadn't been serious, the group's reaction would have been a genuine Blue Kodak moment. They all hoped Lee wouldn't kill his rival in his drunken rage as they watched the match below. Area of viewing. Mei. With a slight smile, the girl turned to face Hinata, her speaker, and replied, "Yes." "What did you do to Lee? Why is he acting like that?" "Nothing. I gave him a little sake to help relax his mind. Seems to be working." "I can't believe you would do something like that." "Oh, don't worry. He'll be fine. If I were you, I'd be more worried about that Hyuga Neji. Looks like he's gonna get a real ass kickin' the way he's going," the Mahogany Kunoichi said, waving the girl away. "What? You can't. Shish. Just watch the match, girlie. We can talk afterward. After all, your cousin is involved." The arena Neji was furious because his efforts to defeat his spandex wearing opponent were becoming less of a match and more of a rodeo act, with him serving as the entertainment. Why am I unable to strike him? If I get more than that initial palm strike, I'll be lucky. Otherwise, I mop the floor with this loser. Was he letting me win because he knew he was superior to me? Or was he just playing with me all along? That jerk. The boy roared in anger and dropped into a stance that many ninjas were accustomed to. You are within my range of divination, Hake Rokuhuion Sho. He cried out, 2, 4, 16, 32, 64, and the Hyuga started with 2 thrusts as he approached. Bobbing out of the first 2, weaving away from the second, leaning back into a back handspring, and pirouetting around the final set before slamming his fist into the Hyuga's abdomen, Lee dissolved into a drunken ballet. The boy's Byakugan flared to life, and he grabbed the extended arm, flipping his target over and delivering 3 devastating blows to Lee's back as he called out again, but the attack never succeeded. Byakugan Sandageki. The boy was flipped forward by the last blow, but as he flew, the Bull.Cut Genin executed a stunningly strong reverse axe kick that sent Neji skyward. Following a leaping uppercut with what appeared to be flame on his fist, the mini guy caught himself and landed in a crouch. He then finished with a spinning back kick while slurring out loud, Konoha Wakai Arashi. The 2 landed in a heap, neither of them moving an inch, until Lee, glowing red and grinning broadly, got to his feet on wobbly legs. I won. Ha! What a ya say about fate now, Neji, Wedgie. He hiccuped after his outburst and collapsed to the ground, grinning but unconscious. As medics arrived and gathered them on stretchers, the proctor entered the room and announced that the match was a draw. He started calling out the subsequent group of competitors as this was happening. Area of viewing, the spectators were stunned because they had never witnessed such a vicious demonstration of taijutsu, but they were even more astounded by the fact that one of the 2 was fighting while intoxicated. Naruto made his observation while laughing aloud. I can't believe Lee is that good even while hammered. Who'd have thought? I may have to take him up on that offer of a spar after all. With a look that could freeze Medusa in a staring contest, Hinata turned to face Mei. I didn't expect it to be that entertaining. Lee really proved himself in my eyes, the woman said with a simple smile. How can you say that? You were the one who gave him sake. His response was a shrug, saying, he looked like he needed to relax. Besides, it's not like I knew he was a drunken boxing prodigy or anything. You. Will Hinata Hyuga and Ino Yamanaka proceed to the floor? When her name was suddenly called, the girl appeared somewhat startled, but then a mask of stoic indifference took over. At her side, the pale blonde said, I've been waiting for this. Hinata. I see, so you want to see where you belong. Well, I'll be glad to demonstrate that for you. Yamanaka-san, she replied with a chilly smirk. The announcement that 2 more distinguished shinobi clansmen were heading to the floor caused a slight stir in the crowd. Even though their noise was muffled, the tension between the 2 girls was so intense that it felt like someone had placed a damp blanket over the area on a summer evening. You ready? Why, of course. Ino.san, are you? Yeah, I've been working hard up to this point. I want to take that high horse from right under you. Then, Hajime, Hinata disappeared not even a second after he finished speaking. There was no dust cloud or blur, she simply vanished. What? How on earth? Ino.san. The girl paled, and if that was still possible, when she looked down and saw Hinata's hand just a few centimeters from her heart. The Hyuga princess simply got up and left as she said, Ino.san, this match was over before it even started. Your techniques must be able to keep up with their target, or else you leave yourself open. Your taijutsu must be strong or you'll be trapped. And your mind must be clear or else you risk losing in a mental battle that if you can't catch the target leaves you just as vulnerable as before. You only have family jutsu to rely on. While I only need my familial techniques to beat you. Hopefully you continue training, you might reach my level 1D. She froze, her body still enough to resemble a rooted tree, but again it just disappeared. Shukuken. Ino was slumped against the wall a millisecond later, the impact creating a web of spider cracks. Winner, Hinata Hyuga. This is the close of the second round. We will begin the next stage of the tournament after a 15-minute break for our contestants. Stands. Hinata is truly a frightening genin, to be able to perform afterimages at her age. For the second time today, the Scarecrow turned to face his rival and saw that he was genuinely serious. In my opinion, He might end up being a typical ninja if this continues. Guy, what's wrong now? That girl moved way too fast for a genin. I agree. However, that's not what scares me. She was moving that fast, and I believe that she had weights on her, if not actual ones. Then seals for such, the bush. Brown Nin explained, capturing the attention of all the Junin. Since the group had nothing to say in response to such a shocking discovery, silence reigned. Area of viewing. Wow, that girl's come a long way, hasn't she? That she has. Though I want to know just what she's been doing while she was gone. I don't, it'd be boring to know what all your opponent is capable of before you get into the fight. Let her have her secrets, Naruto. Besides, you have yours. That is none of your concern. May. Anyway, who do you think we're gonna end up fighting in the finals? Jumping ahead to the finale, are we? Someone's gotten cocky. Not cocky, I know that I'm going to fight Sasuke next. I just feel that it's gonna happen, so once I put him in his place, then what? I don't know. I'm not a psychic, and I can't see the future, so we'll end up pulling straws, I'm sure. While watching the fight, if it could be called that, Naruto and Mei stood close to the railing and talked about their third genin partner's development. People, we have once again started the tournament, so will the finalists please come to the grounds? The proctor said as the female returned to her friends. The proctor handed the ninja a folded piece of paper after they stood in obedience. When I say, open your sheets and tell me your number. This is to determine who fights in the next circuit, and is to determine who shall then go on to face the Hokage and Sannin. Each number was called one at a time, and the man grinned as he spoke out loud when it was finished. The following are the rounds. Naruto Uzumaki Hyuga vs Sasuke Uchiha. Mikakushi Kurama vs Sakura Haruno Hinata Hyuga vs Hana Inuzuka. With the exception of the first two called, will all other contestants kindly proceed to the viewing area? As the renowned last Uchiha faced off against the supposed dead last of Konoha, the crowd was humming with excitement. In silence, everyone awaited the start of such a shut-out match. Booth. So, seems like things are finally getting interesting around here, old man. Took you long enough. Sarutobi let out a dry laugh as he said, well, I needed to see the potential of all my shinobi Tsunade. I can't randomly pick favorites and fight them at will. These types of things are necessary for a Hokage at times. Whatever, I just want to kick some ass, I'm getting cramps sitting in this damn chair. Haha, relax Tsunade. Time. We'll all get our chances once this round is finished. I know I want to see this kid in action for real. You and me both. I'm losing money on this thing. Observing the port as Sakura and Mei watched the fight in front of them get ready to start, Hinata stood beside them. Each of the girls had an opinion about the outcome of the match, but they remained silent while shinobi gathered around them to share their predictions for the winner. The arena. Are you ready, HN? This loser will be responsible for everything. Naruto simply nodded while standing with his hands in his pockets and looking absently into the clouds. His face lit up with the slightest of grins as Uchiha said, Oi, Dobi. I'm gonna take that sword from you once this is all over. Tisk tisk tisk. Sasuke, how can you claim to barter for something when you have nothing that I would want in your possession? That seems quite unfair, doesn't it? Fine, then name your price. I'll let you have whatever you want should you win. Whatever you say. Well, seeing as you're targeting something near and dear to me, why don't we go with your eyes? That apparently caused a gasp from the audience. Nobody had anticipated that the boy would make such a personal request. No way, Dobi, what kind of a fucked up request is that? You see, this sword is a personal moment of my late sensei. So, for you to ask for something like that, I'd prefer you see just what you were basically asking me to put on the line for your childish amusement. Now, since you get my point, let's get on with this show. The proctor called for the match to start and jumped out of the area just in time. Kaden. Gokyaku no Jutsu. Exhaling into his hand, the Uchiha released a medium-sized fireball. The flames simply exploded outward, encircling the blonde in a ring of charred earth, and Naruto didn't even flinch when they struck him. What? Sorry, but a jutsu of that strength won't do a damn thing against me, Sasuke. The genin's black eyes narrowed in rage as the remark took effect. He's making fun of me, however. How was my Kaden technique blocked by him? He remained motionless. As Sasuke flipped through seals, he exclaimed, Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Another round of flaming spheres appeared as the Uzumaki exhaled, but this time he hardly moved, only grinning as he cleared the attacks. Huh, you wouldn't happen to know any other moves, would you? If not, I'll have to end this now. With an angry tone, the Avenger replied, you keep insulting me. Fine, I was hoping to use this against the Sannin in the finals, but seems like you'll have to do. Lazily, Naruto threw a kunai at his opponent, who ducked the projectile but had his hair fall over his eyes, obscuring his face. So, he does have it after all. This will be good, the genin thought, nodding. With a roar, the year's genin rushed forward, standing. His target skillfully sidestepped a roundhouse combination, sidestepped the subsequent haymaker, and then flipped over the subsequent low spin kick. A stream of fire erupted from 2 fingers and whipped towards the crouching boy, forcing him to perform a back handspring and a one-handed cartwheel as he revealed his family's legacy to the world. The Gaki turned around with an overhead swing and called out, Kaden. And show. Inside the raven-haired Uchiha's eyes, the Sharingan had woken up and was spinning crazily. Observing the port, looks like things just got complicated. Sakura and Hinata both glanced at the girl and said, what do you mean? Since Sasuke activated the Sharingan, Naruto must now prevent that obnoxious child from copying his techniques, the Mahogany Kunoichi retorted, sighing and shaking her head. The arena? The Dobi couldn't have done it without the seals, so when did he do them for that? Naruto laughed while he was speaking. Yano Sasuke, you're more of an idiot than I thought. What did you say? Your secret weapon has 3 major flaws. Everyone in the room was shocked. They couldn't believe how entertaining the fight had ended up being. The blonde was successfully defeating the Uchiha, and those who thought the fight would be quick were practically choking on their own thoughts. Now, everyone's attention was genuinely drawn to the news that the Sharingan, Konoha's pride and joy, had defects. Kakashi's expression was one of rage. His pupil was going to use their secret advantage in public to reveal not just his teammates' shortcomings but also his own. To say that he was upset would be equivalent to saying that properly used dish towels get wet. The arena, firstly, it's famous. Any and everyone can figure what it looks like and what it does if they ask an educated shinobi. That being the case, it's pretty much second nature that there are ways around it, this leading to my second point. You, the user, has to see the hand signs in order to accurately copy the jutsu, yet if it's not the full array you still can't copy it. Example being just now, could you copy what I did? Finally, you and your all powerful dojutsu have to be able to keep up with your target. If you can't keep pace, it's pretty safe to say that your eyes can't either. In which case, you lose to me in all aspects, so if I were you, I'd put those eyes away before I show you just how useless they're in this fight, he said, his smirk widening slightly as the Uchiha growled. With a furious roar, the Raven Genin charged forward and yelled, Yuru, I'll let you see the power of the Uchiha and show you right where your place is, as he approached the boy. He went through a few seals while circling his opposing genin before shouting, beneath me. Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu. The user of the Kekkei Genkei exhaled, sending a massive stream of flame in the direction of the young Uzumaki. The jutsu split into multiple tiny flaming dragons halfway there, attacking the boy from various directions. The shinobi's lips formed a malevolent grin as he saw his attack connect, but it was quickly replaced by a shocked expression as he saw the flames flicker and fade from his target's body, and not a hair out of place. What the hell? Naruto's expression was one of amusement as he looked at his opponent. His smirk had not once wavered. Area of viewing with a look of amazement, Ino said, I can't believe this. Naruto, of all people, is evenly matched with Sasuke. Mei responded, it looks like he's beating Sasuke to me. The pale blonde was making to retort when Sakura shook her head and spoke, he's toying with him. Testing him, he's seeing if he can even marginally get serious about this fight. In agreement, Hinata nodded and said, he always does that, unless he already knows that he is encountering a threat. As he consumed a single chip, Shoji interrupted, asking, is it just me, or is he using a bunch of jutsu that are new and unheard of? Come to think of it, he hasn't used a jutsu that I recognize yet. In response, Mei grinned and said, then pay attention, because here one comes. The arena with a bored voice, the Namikaze child began his signature jutsu by forming his hands into a cross and saying, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Smoke erupted from his position as the jutsu was performed, yet when the smoke cleared, the boy was still standing in his original spot. After giving his fellow nin a fierce look, Sasuke burst out laughing and said, You doby. You failed at the one thing you spam. How pathetic. The booth of Kage the Hokage chuckled and shook his head, saying, That Naruto is really something else. As he asked, Sensei, did he just do what I think he did? Jiraiya nodded absently. When the old Kage smiled, he said, Wait and see, Jiraiya, we shall both find out momentarily. The arena Naruto was suddenly deep in the dirt while Sasuke stood above him, murmuring, Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. The blonde looked up and exclaimed, Wow, Sasuke, ya got me, not. In that moment, a green light glowed from beneath the ebony-eyed ninja, and the blonde shinobi disappeared in a tiny puff of smoke. The Uchiha looked down and saw that he was paralyzed, then realized that he was surrounded by a seal array that was immobilizing him. I am immobile. What on earth is this? Genjutsu of some sort? He caught a glimpse of Naruto standing comfortably, hands in his pockets, in the corner of his eye. The boy's forehead began to perspire as he fought against whatever seemed to be holding him down. Oi, duckass. You're within my field of divination. Hake Hyaku Naijahachi Sho. The last thing Uchiha saw before his body erupted in agony was a yellow blur, and throughout it, he could hear his opponent's voice counting, 2.4. 0.8. 0.16. 32. 0.64. 128. The black-haired teen was successfully removed from the other's presence with a forceful open palm strike to the sternum to end the combo. Don't bother getting up, this fight is over. Without chakra your Sharingan is useless, and without that you don't even come close to standing a chance against the Jayuken. If you can't fight without those O.So precious eyes of yours, you have no right to even consider yourself strong. As the teen calmly returned to his chair to relax, the proctor emerged and declared the match over. The audience was in disbelief. They had just seen the unthinkable, Anon Hyuga performing one of their techniques against a Uchiha in a flawless demonstration of skill without a Byakugan. A kunoichi with long black hair, deep red eyes with a ring in the iris, and a battle kimono exclaimed, Amazing! To complete outclass the Uchiha using a Hyuga move without the use of a Kekkei Genkai. Truly fascinating. One shinobi muttered, I never thought that was possible. The Kage booth Jiraiya smiled and nodded as he sat back, saying, As I thought, Kage Bunshin. With a calculating expression on her face, Tsunade said out loud, Mei was right, he is strong, and it seems he was holding back still. In response to his students' questions, the professor laughed once more and said, Quite true, a master in the art of deception this one is. He will be a wildcard for whoever he faces, now to see who else will be joining him. Area of viewing Hinata and Sakura waited by the stairs for the genin as he made his way to his chair, and when he closed in, they glomped him with a scream of joy. That was an amazing match, Naru.kun. I'm glad you used the Hyuga clan technique to put him in his place, exclaimed Hinata, the first to calm down. Sakura responded right away after her fellow kunoichi, her cheeks a little flushed. Naruto. Sensei, that was very well fought on your part. I didn't know you could perform the Jayuken without the Byakugan. Truly an eye-opening battle for all of us. Ito. Arigato, but girls, your matches are gonna be up soon. Good luck, and I hope that you fight smart, not so much in the hard department. Now, will Mikakushi Kurama and Sakura Haruno proceed to the floor? Before her face took on an expression that would make a Hyuga envious, the pinkette blinked before making her way to the arena floor. Sakura. She turned and stared into Naruto's blue eyes as he said, without humor, be careful. She responded with a nod and turned to leave. As she stood next to her partner, the brunette said, You're worried about her, aren't you? Of course I am. Mei isn't going to go easy on her, and she expects Sakura to truly be a decent opponent. I taught her as much as I could within the grounds of what Muramasa Sensei taught me and then some, yet, I fear it won't be enough against the wielder of Tsukiyomi's bond. I.C. Then come. The least we can do is support your student from the rails. She's gonna need it. The proctor was standing between the two girls with a gloomy sense of expectation. He could feel the murderous intent these two were giving off, and it was beginning to perspire. These two feel like two Junin about to fight to the death, even though they're only genin. The shinobi yelled for the match to begin and then leapt from the arena post-haste after reminding them of the rules, especially the ones pertaining to killing. The breeze blew through, catching both women's hair in its soft touch, and neither of them moved. Mei stood with her cane in front of her, her face as hard as stone. Sakura, on the other hand, watched with serene indifference, but her thoughts were racing. How exactly am I going to defeat her? I can't compete with her, not even with Naruto. Sensei's training, I'm going to have to pay close attention and play this one by ear. As the blind Kunoichi opened her mouth to speak, a smirk appeared on her face. Sakura, you feel quite a bit stronger from last time we spoke. It seems Naruto's training actually did pay off well. The young Mibu heir nodded before she could say, "Hi, it did indeed." The mahogany teen responded, "Good, because I would hate for this to be boring." So, with a giggle, Sakura braced herself, calling her chakra into her legs, and the girl disappeared from view. Her senses begged her to move, and she did, just in time to witness the formation of a crater from Mei's axe kick to her position. The older teen finished, looking at her, saying, "Show me what level of power you have attained, Sakura Haruno." Booth Tsunade was stunned when her second student delivered a blow that was so powerful it could have easily matched her own, and she did it without using chakra. As he stared at the scene in front of him, her teammate coughed and asked his old friend, "Geez, just what are you teaching that girl Suande? Hime?" As he observed, their teacher intervened, saying, "In any case, this fight has truly gotten to be quite interesting." The arena as the battle continued, Sakura was dodging blow after blow at an ever-increasing rate. "You're not taking me seriously, are you Haruno-san?" Mei growled and jumped away after simply applying more pressure. As she quickly flipped through seals, the bubblegum Kunoichi remained silent and yelled, "Haiden! Sensakura Saikuron, Thousand Petal Cyclone." Sakura's jutsu took root, and a flurry of cherry blossoms poured into the area. The petals fluttered around the girl in a furious storm of Sakura, floating about elegantly before suddenly rushing towards Mei. While bracing the extended limb with her other arm, the jade-eyed genin quickly flipped through another set of seals before thrusting her palm towards her target and yelling, "Haiden! Insusei, Blazing Comet, again." As the Kunoichi concentrated, a ball of fiery chakra swung to life on her hand. When it solidified, the ball shot off at tremendous speeds in the direction of the whirling petal column. The assaults came together as the fire only grew hotter because of the wind, turning blue as its temperature rose and its revolution accelerated rapidly, but the Sakura petals were unaffected by the fire because they continued to fly during the assault. "Good. This isn't half bad, Pinky, but not quite there. Sweden. Suijinheki. Water release. Water encampment wall." Mei stood where she was, unharmed, as a huge wall of water burst from inside the Tower of Flame, disrupting and then canceling it. The cream-eyed teen smirked as she named her attack, Fumaten no Jutsu, Heavenly Wind Dancer, and flew through seals faster than the eye could follow. Crossing her arms over her chest, Mei gathered chakra for herself and swept them outward, releasing a number of large shuriken of nothing but wind. As they got closer, the blades grew and accelerated sharply, and the Haruno, sensing danger, leapt back a few yards as she started another series of signs. Kaden. Hidan Hensho, Fire Release, Scarlet Bullet Combustion. The young genin put her hands in front of her again and launched a series of boulder-sized bullets of crimson flame at her adversary, obstructing the wind shuriken's onslaught and producing a flashbang grenade-like burst of light. To defend themselves against such a sudden and severe attack on their senses, everyone had to turn away or close their eyes. The booth of Cage in his conversation with his mentor and partner, the Toad Sage said, "Well, Sensei, you weren't kidding. These girls really know how to sling jutsu. I haven't seen a single one of those before except for the Suijinheki technique that Mei girl use. Gotta say, I'm impressed." The upper echelon of shinobi were hiding from the light. Tsunade was lost in thought, thinking, "Mei, how long have you been keeping this strength from me? At any rate, as a Sanin, I promise to test you myself to see how much power you really possess." Area of view. Hinata shielded her eyes from the mini flare below them and screamed at the blonde. Naruto, just what in the world have you been showing Sakura? She's amazing. With his eyes closed, Naruto responded to his friend with a shrug. I taught her all that Muramasa Sensei showed me, and I taught her some other elemental ninjutsu that I figured would be useful to her. I had to get her at least to a point of being amusing to Mei after all. The other shinobi in attendance were amazed by the two kunoichi's apparent extraordinary skill and the fact that they were both using advanced jutsu that no one had ever heard of. To think that these two are still merely genin in rank. Kakashi exclaimed, practically drooling at the sheer number of techniques the two were employing. These jutsu are easily B rank and above, so they should be at least mid to high chunin. As Tenten said out loud to her fellow shinobi, guys, I find it incredibly awesome that Naruto was the one who taught Sakura. She's outstanding. For her to have this much power is totally unreal for someone of our level. The genin themselves shared this sentiment. Our level? I think she passed at the moment she started firing off new techniques like fireworks, Shikamaru responded loudly. The rest of the match was watched in silent excitement by the ninja, who nodded and made comments of agreement. The arena. The two opposing kunoichi remained motionless as the light dimmed, neither of them moving. The two then performed a flexible acrobatic taijutsu display in a blur of motion. Sakura attempted a leaping punch, but Mei was able to avoid him with a side kick. By leaning to the right, grabbing the offending limb, and flipping the girl over her shoulder straight into the dirt, the wine-haired nin ducked the attack. Sakura kicked viciously out of her left leg and stopped her fall by reaching out with her left palm into the dust. As she drew a kunai, Mei was forced to release her grip and launched a sweep at the other teenager, who then proceeded to perform a one-handed cartwheel before swiftly entering with a butterfly kick. In order to dodge the attack, her opponent drew a kunai herself and leaned back into a backflip. The two kunoichi immediately crash into each other after landing, their blades clicking into a spark burst from the friction they were creating. You have my respect. Narukumi no Jutsu. Hell viewing technique. The elder said with a smile on her face. Sakura, you have done very well. I see that I will have to resort to a more serious approach if I am to fight with you any longer. As soon as she heard a laugh that made her eyes widen tenfold, Sakura flinched, her entire body going rigid as her mind was thrown back into the tower once more. This time she was on her knees. She looked up and saw the Uchiha again in front of her, his eyes gleaming with open lust and pure madness, and his throat wound appearing as if it had never been there. Why? Why? You? I thought I killed you? Now, Sakura-chan, I'm hurt. You really think that you could get rid of me that easily? Tisk. Seems like I'm gonna have to teach you a lesson that you won't soon forget, my little cherry blossom. Ha 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 ha. As the blind genin watched her opponent fall, she stepped back, a tiny smirk on her face at the expression of complete horror etched on her target's face. Softly, and more to herself than to her adversary, she said, "Sweet dreams, Sakura." With a weary expression on his face, the proctor entered the room, proclaimed Mei the winner of the match, and summoned a medical team with a stretcher to transport the young pinkhead to the hospital. As this continued, Mei returned to the viewing area and encountered a stern Naruto. In the most sly manner she was familiar with, the girl said, My, what have I here? An angry Naruto-kun, but why, I wonder? What did you do to her? What do you mean? I mean, what genjutsu did you cast on her to win? The only area I didn't train her on was that, and I knew that was a weakness in her style. Now tell me before something bad happens to Sakura. Mei's gaze was now entirely focused on the blonde in front of her, and she asked, why? The Uzumaki sighed and spoke, though grudgingly. I used a technique my sensei used to train me, and it has some potentially traumatic means in order to force you to overcome your weak spots mentally by exposing them in a manner that would hurt you the most. In Sakura's case, she was almost raped by Sasuke in her trial, and she was forced to kill him in order to kill her fan girl self. And it still has quite a strong hold on her mind and heart at the moment. That's why I need to know which genjutsu you used on her. After being informed of all this information as the fight went on, Hinata stood silently for a moment. I used the Narukumi jutsu on her, the dark-haired girl said anxiously. Just patch her up as best you can, and apologize to her for me turning her greatest fear against her at such a vulnerable time. The Dew was taken aback by the foreign nin's voice's level of sarcasm, or lack thereof. Naruto recognized the light in her eye right away as a reminder of a previous wound, and he turned to bow to the girl before quickly leaving the area, making sure to give her some space to breathe. It seems that she has also been harmed in that way. Will Hinata Hyuga and Inuzuka Hana come to the grounds for the final match of the cage slot? Before making her way to the arena floor for her fight, the Blue Net simply glanced at her fellow bonded Kunoichi. However, before doing so, she placed a delicate hand on the girl's shoulder and made eye contact. Don't worry, Naruto-kun will do everything in his power to make sure that neither you nor Sakura have to deal with such painful memories anymore. That is a promise. Saint T. Stay away. With her back to the wall, Sakura knelt down, her clothes ripped, her face smeared with tears, and her wide jade eyes glowed with fear. As she yelled into the night, footsteps resounded all around her, and a menacing chuckle erupted from the shadows, sending her thoughts further into the abyss of fear as the voice responded. What a shame, my dear cherry blossom, I'm hurt. I thought that you loved me, yet you run from my touch. Why is that? Yuru. I don't love you anymore, I hate you. Oh, went and found someone else, have you? I see, then I shall merely take what is mine, and then whoever he is can have you. The Rosette struggled and fought with a strength that only desperation could give her, but she was blindsided when a body tackled her from the side. However, it was in vain because when a third voice joined the chorus of her cries, both people froze. I'm sorry, but I can't allow you to do that, Sasuke. Naruto was wearing a black kimono with ragged sleeves and a yin-yang kamen on either side of his breast when he left. Everything was in its proper place. His hair was shoulder length, and his left earring hung loosely. The blonde's eyes were the only thing that seemed to have changed. Instead of being their typical oceanic blue, they were glistening gold in the terrible light. If you don't remove yourself from my student, I'll have to do so by force. Kuso. So, this is whom you've fallen for? The bastard who gave you to me in the first place. Che. Then I'll take him from you first before we have our fun, nay. Sakura could only watch as the raven-haired specter charged at full speed towards the other male. Now, die, sling, smooth, only after you, Teme. The Uchiha collapsed once more, blood accumulating beneath him in a growing crimson mass. His body sagged and his mind shut down, but his eyes were wild and angry. However, he was soon dead at the genin's feet. Are you all right, Sakura? As her teacher assisted her in standing up, the girl simply nodded silently. She abruptly turned into the embrace as he put his arms around her body and started crying again. She held on tight, as though releasing him would cause him to disappear, and she sobbed repeatedly while repeating the words. Thank you, sensei. Thank you. In order to calm the shuddering her body was experiencing at the moment, her savior simply rubbed light circles in her back and stroked her hair without saying anything. Then she became conscious. End of song. As she wondered out loud, she noticed that she was in a blank white room with sunlight streaming in from a window to her right that was not blinded. W. What was that? Glad you're awake, Sakura-chan. I was worried for you for a minute. Her teacher was reading in a chair right next to her as she turned to her left. N. Naruto. Sensei. What are you doing here? She stammered, a flush roaring across her features. What? A teacher can't be concerned for his student and sit by their side until they wake up. Sheesh, you could have told me that sooner. He waited. By my side the whole time. How long was I out? Only long enough for Hinata to have her fight apparently. I'm told it was very entertaining since she was up against an Inuzuka heiress. Hana's her name if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm more worried about you at the moment. Are you alright? I think I am. What the hell did that Mei girl use on me? She said, nodding before speaking. Narakumi no Jutsu. It forces the mind to unveil their worst nightmare upon themselves. It's not a pretty jutsu, nor was it one that I prepared you for. Gomenasai. I should have warned you about her genjutsu abilities. Had I not intervened when I did. You. As she said, wait. You mean you actually were there inside my mind? It wasn't a dream? Her face turned a few shades redder. Hi. I had to help you, otherwise you could have had a mental breakdown, or worse. I couldn't bring myself to face the guilt of doing nothing for you when I could help it. I hope you'll pardon my intrusion. The two sat in passive solitude for a moment without saying anything or doing anything. When a Chunin saw the blonde, he relayed his message after the door opened and he entered halfway. Uzumaki.san. The tournament is continuing. You are being called to the arena for the finals. Haruno.san. If you're feeling better, you may attend as well. This isn't something you're going to want to miss. Both gave a nod, and the shinobi disappeared. There was silence once more, and then the blonde stood up to go. But he was stopped by a call as he got to the door. Naruto. Sensei. Yes, Sakura. Chan. I forgive you. Also, good luck in your fight. I'll be watching. As he left, a tiny smile appeared on his face and he said, thank you. Once he was gone, the pinkhead just grinned and said, no, Naruto.kun. Thank you. Later on, the arena floor. I'm quite pleased with the results of this tournament. You have all proven the might of Konoha, and are a testimony to the blazing will of fire amongst our people. I am proud of each and every one of you. I especially want to give a mention to our 3 finalists for having endured throughout all of their battles and reaching this stage. Now, for the next portion of this fight, so as to not damage anything within the confines of our village, we will be fighting outside of the village. Within the forests of Hai no Kuni itself. May all of you present your best in your fight, and may your strength reveal just what level a shinobi should strive for in the future. When Sarutobi concluded, the audience was stunned. There was only forest outside the village, so it would be impossible to fight there. Everyone in attendance had the same simple thought. How strong are these 3 to be relocating the battle outside the city walls? A short while later, in Konoha Forest, the proctor announced the results after tabs were pulled to determine who would face whom. First match will be Mikakushi Kurama versus Lady Tsunade Senju. Second match will be Naruto Uzumaki Hyuga versus Lord Jiraiya the Sage. Finally, Lady Hinata Hyuga will face against our Lord Hokage. Every Sannin member grinned upon hearing the pairings. They were genuinely in for an exciting and crazy battle. Sarutobi simply grinned upon hearing his matchup. The girl's skills would be put to the test. He continued to think about the topic even as his white-haired pupil said, well, this is going to be quite interesting. First match, Hajime. The 2 kunoichi looked at each other with stoic tension as a gentle breeze started at the moment of the call. A single leaf was blown into the clearing they were in as they watched their opponent, and like the wind, it quickly stopped its natural inclination. Their fight started at that point. The 2 started their dance of strike and evade, counter and parry as they charged forward. As the chaos started to take shape, elegance gave way to savage beauty. Trees were uprooted or completely destroyed, craters filled the solid earth, and the air itself was forced out of their presence as shockwaves from their collisions erupted. More than a battle between kunoichi, this was a battle of titans. The mahogany-haired kunoichi eventually switched tactics and flipped quickly through hand seals before yelling, Doryuheki, 1. As the slug princess charged forward, a massive wall of sturdy earth rose up out of the ground in front of her. She laughed and threw back her fist, saying, oh come on Mei. You don't really think something like this is gonna actually stop me? You are doing better imitating my super strength. The wall was completely destroyed in a matter of seconds as the busty Sannin roared and slammed her fist into the jutsu. As Tsunade searched for her target, a cloud loomed around the kunoichi due to the rock's quick deterioration to dust. Don't worry Tsunade. Sama, there is a reason for my change in tactics, one that you'll find very interesting indeed. Resho. 2. Was the message she received from a voice off to her right. The blonde was suddenly hit by a hard hook from the left. A roundhouse from the right and another blow from below followed the attack, knocking her a few inches off the ground. Before she could orient herself, she was hit by another barrage of blows. 2 kicks kicked her chin, sending her skyward. An uppercut carried on this trajectory. Another round of blows struck her midsection, causing her to double over. And finally, a heavy axe kick sent her crashing to the ground, creating a striking crater in the process. The genin landed silently, looking anxiously at the indent, her mind calculating potential tactics. She seems to have taken things seriously as well. I might need to use that jutsu set, Kuso. Tsunade was grinning as she brushed herself off after standing from herself. Made placement. You really are skilled, far more than I gave you credit for. That means I can get serious, right? She asked. Her response was a nod, and she assumed a stance and started to gather her chakra. As the crater fell under her newly discovered strength, the pressure only made it wider. N. Does this sound really DBZ right now, or is it just me? Carrot carrot. As she prepared, Mei lowered herself into a low stance of her own, fingering her shikomizu ever so delicately. The elder shinobi disappeared in a flash, only to reappear a few feet away from her pupil's side, charging in quickly with her fist already raised to attack. Mei realized this and waited for the limb to be thrust to avoid it, but it was her fault. The blonde then skillfully swung into a vicious side kick that struck the girl. As she was hurled into a tree trunk some distance away from her opponent, her grunt only made the older woman happier. She coughed as a small amount of blood leaked from her lips as she pulled herself up, saying, It still hurts like hell to be hit by her. The younger female also charged in as the woman resumed her charge, but instead of confronting her sensei, she twisted into a butterfly, bringing her heel into the back of her target's head. She assumed an Iaido stance and held her cane underhanded without waiting for her to recover. Tachikaze. 3. She quickly drew her concealed blade and made 2 cuts that formed a huge disk of air that rotated and started to resemble a vacuum. The wind burst outward in waves of slicing arcs as she sheathed her sword and pushed the butt of her handle into the turned disc. The technique pounded at the senju's body, causing gashes and wounds all over her front, leaving her unable to block with anything other than her forearms. Her eyes were wide as she turned to her student. Her clothes would be nothing more than ragged strips of cloth right now if they weren't stylized ninja gear. That move. Is this what she has been keeping from me? It happened so quickly that I was unable to even mount a strong defense. Such ability. As she dressed her wounds, the slug princess said, That was impressive, Mei. I didn't know you were skilled with a weapon, particularly a sword. Her small grin demonstrated her delight in the situation. I figured that if you get serious about this, I should too. My guardian before I met you and Shizune.ne. Chan taught me how to wield a sword with efficiency, and since he was blind, it benefited me greatly as it was convenient in any situation since no one would touch the staff of a believed blind woman. That's true. Not many would, but now I believe it's time I turn things up another notch. Let's see how powerful you really are. The busty kunoichi nodded in agreement. Arena. The crowd was in awe because they hadn't witnessed anything like this in a long time. For those who are trying to figure out how the crowd is seeing this, the screen in the middle of the arena wall is the reason. Video. Cameras positioned throughout the forest are used by shinobi to broadcast a live feed to onlookers from various perspectives. The sight in front of them truly astounded the assembled crowd, especially the genin, who were in awe. Whoa, that Mei is something else entirely. She warned us about Naruto and Hinata, but I think she's just as big a threat, if not more so. I can't believe what I'm seeing. A genin keeping up with a Sanin. Something definitely needs to change within our ranking system if there are people like that in our forces. There were murmurs of agreement among the shinobi corps. As the conflict progressed. I mean, hell, Forehead trained with Naruto for a week and she improved by leaps and bounds. Inquired Ino Yamanaka, a specific genin, if she was the one warning us about the other two, does that mean that they are also this strong? Ya no Ino, I don't know whether that's a compliment or an insult, but thanks anyway. As all the genin turned to face the rosette sitting in a chair calmly watching the screen, or a certain mahogany-haired person, the platinum blonde jumped a little at the voice behind her. They also returned their attention to the massive monitor after the initial shock of the girl's appearance subsided. Woodland. The two women were performing a highly acrobatic act, circling each other with kicks and punches. Before calling forth a pale blue chakra blade on her hands, the Sanin disengaged by making a series of hand signs. However, occasionally a blue electrical vein would leap from the projected weapon. She smirked as she rushed forward once more, seemingly determined to put an end to their argument. Mei's chakra gradually started to flare around her body, trailing broad ellipses and wildly waving. A grin returned to her face as she entered hand seals at an even quicker rate than before. I'd Asumi no Jutsu. 4. As she moved closer to her opponent, Tsunade could feel the mist rolling from her person, thick and bone. Chilling even from a distance. Her instinct took over and she jumped out of the sky, landing on a tree branch as she looked back down. She was shocked to see that a thick layer of ice had completely covered the ground. Well, you don't see that every day. No you don't. I can't have you interrupting me, dear sensei. so pardon me if I take this small precaution. Though, if you attack me and miss, I want you to know that this fight will end rather swiftly, yet if I complete this next move the fight shall finish as well. I guess this is checkmate, Lady Tsunade. The woman gritted her teeth and snarled, saying, this fight will be over soon, very soon indeed. While she was saying this, her mind was elsewhere. Ice. She can really use ice, which is fantastic. I need to stop this as soon as possible. How? I'm going to assume that if I touch that ice, I'll be up to my neck in it pretty quickly, but I can't let her use whatever jutsu she has planned. Consider Tsunade. The medic heard her student's voice shouting the technique name from directly behind her before she could think any further. Fumaden no Jutsu. 5. Her vision became blurry, inverted, rapidly rotating, and warping in and out of focus before the woman could react. As soon as vertigo gripped her, she lost her balance and asked herself, what the hell is this jutsu doing to me, as she fell. Even though she could feel the pain of hitting something, well, multiple things. The more she tried to feel it out, the Lady Tsunade realized after what felt like hours that she had not yet fallen to the ground below. As she was slammed into a particularly hard surface, her senses gradually but surely opened to full capacity again. Gia. What the hell? The embrace of darkness suddenly embraced her world. Arena. What fearsome power, yeah. With or without the use of the camera. Wielding shinobi outside the arena's walls, the ninja and civilian spectator crowds could only marvel at the scene in front of them. An enormous wind column soared into the sky, twisting and twisting until it formed a massive tornado. One of its strengths was that viewers could feel powerful wind gusts crashing into them even from a distance. As it blew through the crowds, it whipped at their clothes, wildly lifted their hair, and made them cover their faces to keep their faces from getting raw. Then it simply vanished, the winds going back to nothing. As he spoke, the proctor's face was one of complete incredulity because the viewing screen had somehow cut to him. T.Th.is match is concluded, since neither individual can continue to fight. This match is a draw. Rewind. Think, Tsunade, please. Fumaden no Jutsu. Kuso. When the slug princess fell from the tree branch, her right hand struck her assailant as her senses were overwhelmed and she brought it back. Before she passed out of consciousness, that is, if the abrupt gasp was any indication. Flashback termination. The next match will begin momentarily. We will be moving to the location of the next two contestants. Arena. Are you kidding me? That match was a draw? What the hell was that last jutsu? I didn't even hear the name of it. The battle that had taken place in front of them left the genin uncertain about their future. One of the strongest ninja in the entire shinobi world was able to compete with this girl, who was no older than they were. Even though she had been trained by a Sanin, if she was able to draw with one, perhaps her warning was valid. Shikamaru sighed and massaged his aching temples, trying to think of a plausible explanation for what they had all just seen. What in the hell is going on with that girl? She was raised by a Sanin, so there's no logical way she could have kept up with her. The next fight was about to start, so the Nara just muttered out a Mendoku's, and looked at the screen, giving up on understanding. Cue music. Breaking Benjamin Valoris, Blow Me Away. The next match of the final, Naruto vs Lord Jiraiya, begin. Hey, Gaki, I saw your earlier matches in the tournament. I know you were holding back, so, go nuts and make this an interesting fight, okay? The Toad Sage said with a sly smile while adopting a lazy defensive stance. The blonde closed his eyes and let a grin develop before hurling a kunai at the senior shinobi. Jiraiya was startled by the abrupt movement and began to move before realizing the direction of the kunai. He let the projectile fly past him and titled his head to the right, laughing. Come on, I saw better fighting when you were against those of your own rank. You know, old man, it gets annoying constantly being underestimated by everyone around you. If you don't take this seriously, I may just opt to kill you, he said, twitching as he felt cold steel on the skin of his throat and opening his eyes wide as he looked slightly behind him. How the hell? Shadow clone. The fact that a genin can employ such a sophisticated technique still astounds me. I suppose I ought to become more serious. The shinobi with white hair sighed and nodded in response, saying, yeah, guess you're right. Well, then, Hari. Jizo. When the ninja's hair started to grow wildly and spike until it looked like a white porcupine, the blonde jumped back. As they got farther apart, the genin started making hand gestures before putting his hand to his mouth and exclaiming, "Hosenka no Jutsu." A number of flames shot out of the blonde's mouth and swiftly flew in the direction of their target, but his opponent had other ideas. Hari. Jigoku. The young nin were forced to flee to the trees as the dome of white burst outwards in a blaze of flying spikes, obstructing the flying embers. The Sannin grinned and said, "Well, kid, you've got talent, I'll give you that. But, it takes more than that to fight with a Sannin." He laughed out loud. "I agree. Futon. Keiskiri Bakuden no Jutsu." The elder shinobi grunted as he started a set of seals for his own jutsu, which he finished in less than a second with a cry as a series of wind arcs suddenly came into view from several directions. Kaden. Karyu Enden. As the sage summoned the flaming beast, a huge dragon poured from his mouth. It quickly swam around the ninja, protecting him from the wind blades and intensifying until it turned blue from absorbing the blows. Then, with a mad smile, Jiraiya launched the dragon into the air and then lowered it heavily back into the forest. The earth rocked violently beneath them, and the ensuing explosion was felt all the way inside the stadium. Arena. Geez, if they continue in this manner, Naruto Sensei will become very serious. After turning to face her pink-haired friend, Ino responded, "Eh? Did you fail to notice that dragon? What do you mean by serious?" The jade-eyed Kunoichi sighed and replied, "That wasn't particularly noteworthy. Sensei could use a single jutsu to burn down the entire forest if he so desired. Although I'm not sure of the Sannin's strength, I am aware that he shouldn't play with Naruto because that only makes him angry." "What happened to you, Sakura? You've changed so much. Where does this undying loyalty to Naruto come from? I know he's strong, but I can't see why you have so much faith in that strength. Just what has he done to you?" Was the blonde's turn to sigh as she looked at her former rival. Although her mouth would never ask this question, at least not yet. "I swear, the next time I see that boy, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. I don't see what you see in him, Sakura, but I will find out what he's done to you," she said, turning her attention back to the screen and resolving to act differently the next time she saw the blonde by herself. The forest. As the two men evaluated their fight, blue eyes gazed into brown on either side of the crater. The young Uzumaki spoke first, grinning, "Gotta say, you're not bad, old man. Even though I contributed to its creation, it's amazing to be able to control a fire dragon of that level." "Thanks, but it seems like you're still holding back, Gaki, if you don't think I'm serious. Look, I can tell you're restraining yourself too, so don't go attempting to give me a speech," the blonde said, interrupting the other, and starting to scratch the back of his head. "I apologize right now if you want me to be serious because..." As he started to emit ki towards the Sannin, his eyes took on a chilly gleam. "I only get serious if I intend to kill you," he said. "This kid's ki is heavier than Orochimaru's. Just what in the world is going on here?" the man exclaimed, shocked by the boy's alarming level of intent, which was higher than some of his most formidable opponents in the past. The old ninja coughed and collected himself before responding with a nod, saying, "Well, I understand your sentiments, kid, so why not make this a fun experience for both of us? Winner takes all after one hit. Without it being a matter of life or death, we employ the best jutsu we are capable of." The blonde's interest piqued and she raised an eyebrow, saying, "Okay, what's at stake?" The toad sage responded, smiling like a Cheshire, "Nothing grand. If I win, you tell me what you're hiding. Then you teach me something if I win. Are you okay with that?" "Yes. I can appreciate your wish to study under the renowned Jiraiya." The kabuki dressing shinobi called to the sweat-dropped genin, who simply shook his head and started to gather his chakra, saying, "Don't hold back on this one, kid, or you might end up hurt." With a smile on his face, he named his technique, Kaden Goen Rasengan. He held his hand out to his side, and a sphere of sky-blue chakra slowly came to life in his palm. When it reached the size of his fist, he blew flames upon it, turning it black and encircling it with a ring of flames. With a slight smile on his face, the blonde said, "So, fire is it?" as he studied the scene in front of him. "Okay, I'll match that move. I've been meaning to give this a try for a while." As he drew upon his chakra, Naruto held out his hand, palm facing the sky, and ignited his arm ablaze in a vermilion color. A little too quickly, the flames started to slither up the boy's arm, warping and turning into a solid azure color as it enclosed upon the open appendage. Eventually, they coalesced into a sphere of their own as the blonde's smile turned to a smirk at the look he was getting from his opponent. Kaden. Konpekiran. End of song. What the hell is that? Exclaimed the Toad Sage. The Rasengan was created using pure elemental manipulation, so he couldn't have recreated it by merely watching it now. Oh no, Sensei was correct. This child is a wild card. Let's see what this Gaki does with that, then. The two jumped at each other as one and launched their attacks as soon as they were within striking range. It was an explosion of a collision. As the two moves ground at each other, arcs of flame streamed from their combined jutsu. Gaki. You're one helluva shinobi in my book. I'll teach you something really cool after this is all over, but I can't afford to lose here, was all Jiraiya could do as he speculated in utter awe of the blonde's strength. The sphere expanded as it continued to ram into Naruto's technique, pumping more chakra into his attack. The young man's smirk slightly expanded, but he made no vocal response. Let's see what happens then. He watched the fire intensify, turning brighter and more whitish as he channeled a little more of the energy into his own move. When I take it up a level. Then, for some strange reason, the flame changed again, turning a fuchsia white hue. What in the name of Kami? Ka. Boom. Prior to the actual explosion, the shockwave burst from the collision's epicenter. The bomb had completely destroyed the area, reducing trees within a 20-meter radius to cinder and ash, and its crater had once again grown. The entire center of the crater was made of glass, and the air itself had become arid due to the extreme heat between the two jutsu, as one might anticipate from desert weather. Poor Jiraiya was smashed into a tree, and he was actually inside it, leaving his imprint. However, Naruto was lying on his face in the dirt, obviously unconscious. With wide, cautious eyes, the proctor entered the room, assessed the damage, and then succinctly rendered his decision. After saying, "Neither contestant is conscious, so this match is considered a draw," he walked away, his thoughts replaying the destruction he had witnessed. Note to self. Never, ever irritate those two. In any case, what kind of monsters are in our program? Arena. Once more, the audience was in disbelief. I can't believe it, Naruto kept up with Jiraiya. Naruto of all freaking people. I know what ya mean. First Sasuke, now this. Huh, what a troublesome situation we find ourselves in. You're telling me. As they watched the fight's highlight reel, Kiba, Shikamaru, and Shoji shared their opinions with each other. How one of their own could be so strong, and the dead. Last class. Clown at that. Was simply astounding. Now you know just how powerful he really is. Mei was leaning against the guard rail with a small, satisfied smile on her face when the group turned around. When Ino saw the girl, he approached her expressionlessly. May I help you with something, Yamanaka-san? The wine-haired Kunoichi asked, tilting her head in a very Naruto-like manner. The pale blonde fell to her knees in front of her fellow genin and said, "Gomen, I insulted you earlier and I should have realized what I was getting myself into. Please, I ask you to teach me to be a better Kunoichi." No, why not? The white-eyed genin simply raised 2 fingers in response to the shake of her head, saying, 2 reasons. 1. You only ask because you've seen my strength. So you now know that I could crush you as easily as one does an insect on their wall. That isn't what I want you asking me for. 2. I already have a student. The other simultaneous cries of, "Nani?" caused their ears to stand up completely. The girl closed her eyes and responded with a nod. HN. 10. Shan is the one I will be teaching until the Chunin exams roll around, understand? The brunette with the buns jumped and yelled, "Me? Arigato," while pointing at herself. Think nothing of it. You are currently the weakest of us, aside from Ino, and you asked to learn from me without knowing what the full extent of my abilities were. So, no hard feelings, but I'm going to make you a better Kunoichi. Just because I can truly see the potential within you. Deflated, the weapon user drew a circle with her foot and muttered "Oh." She simply nodded. Well, Hinata, I just have one bit of advice for you. The Hyuga looked at the girl and said, "Remember, a Kunoichi is just as much a ninja as she is a woman." The Hyuga remained silent. The girl simply hummed an acknowledgement while blinking, but her face was clearly marked with confusion. Forest. We now have our final battle of the tournament, Hyuga Hinata vs Lord Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. May this match begin. With only a faint rustle, the leaves danced softly from tree branch to earth and ground as the wind blew through the forest canopy like a whispering echo. Hyuga Hinata and Sarutobi Hiruzen, the final two fighters in the tournament, are only 5 feet apart. The older shinobi chooses to address his younger subordinate after chuckling lightly. I must say, Hinata-chan, I'm very impressed with your progression in this tournament. To perform some of the feats that you have as a genin is truly extraordinary, and I'm quite honored to be fighting someone so talented, so don't hold back. Show me what you're capable of. The brunette just stood with her eyes closed and her head lowered a little. Her breathing was shallow and her posture was loose, as if she was in her own world. Hinata, you wanted to stay back there with Naruto and that Mei girl, so why did you leave for private training? I'm tired of being weak. Having him protect me and teach me just isn't what I want anymore. I promised that I'd become strong, enough to protect him, my family, and myself. I won't be able to achieve that level of strength if I'm always following him around and relying on Naruto. I must follow my own path, get better in my own way. Ya know? Understood. Then I believe we are ready for you to truly learn to harness your inner potential. We have only a little time. With a steady tone, the kunoichi opened her eyes and said, "Hi. As you wish, Hokage-sama." The girl disappeared without a single muscle movement. So she is capable of that, the old flame shadow thought, narrowing his eyes before calling out his jutsu in a flurry of hand signs. Doden. Doryu Taiga. Hiruzen spun around, trying to trap his opponent by spitting mud along the ground. This was not to be, though, as he heard the words, "Sweden. Mazurapa," yelled behind him once more. The elderly ninja jumped to the left without turning to avoid the jutsu that was coming at him. The elder landed in a sliding crouch after pulling into a one-handed cartwheel, his hands already flipping through more seals and tossing a kunai from his pouch. Cage Shuriken no Jutsu. As they headed toward the Hyuga, a single kunai multiplied into 1,000, but she still grinned a little and spun around, exclaiming, "Hakesho Kaden." The genin slid into a stance, dropping the jutsu to deflect the attack. She bared her Kekkei Genkei, Byakugan, and rushed forward into close proximity to her target, causing veins to bulge near her eyes. The white-eyed teenager dropped low, brought her arm back with her palm facing out and her fingers slightly curled, and then struck. Here goes. Hake Kusho. Even as he was lifted off his feet and carried 5 meters to crash into a tree trunk and disappear in a puff of smoke, the professor could only stare at the girl in front of him. The girl's face briefly registered shock. Kuso. A clone of a shadow, but where is Kaden? Karyu Enden. 3 giant dragon heads of flame slammed into the icy shield as the young woman crouched and formed a dome of ice around herself. The old man was blinded by his opponent as steam rushed into the immediate area as the fire and ice melted together. You're doing very well, Hinata-chan. I'm very impressed by your growth so far. I may just have to get serious if this keeps up, the cage said, closing his eyes. He heard something approaching from his right, so he leapt to the right to avoid it, but he didn't completely escape. Ugh! He felt a sharp blow to his left shoulder, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that it was a chakra spear. What on earth? Chakra Senbon. My own original technique. I can attack you from a distance without falling target to traps or jutsu, and in this fog. I have the upper hand. You should be taking this fight seriously, if not you may lose. With a sigh, the elder sealed his hands together and exclaimed, Kai. There was a slight smile on the old man's lips as he moved his shoulder and said, My apologies, Hinata-chan. I will take this more seriously from here on out. Be warned, I am Hokage for a reason. He took off into the fading mist. Arena, the Hokage's power and skill, even for his age, astounded the onlookers, the majority of whom had never witnessed him engage in one-on-one combat. However, the Hyuga clan was more shocked than anyone else because they had never before witnessed how powerful Hinata's art had grown. Unbelievable, Lady Hinata created a jutsu. She's advanced to using the empty palm, and the Kaden. Most impressive. Even her father, Hiyashi, who was always stoic, had a tiny smile on his face. Viewing port. Even though it was concealed by her face, Neji was hot. A slow groaning reverberated from the metal as his hands gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. I can't believe this. Lee first, and now Hinata is better than I have been yet. How can people who are meant to fail turn against fate? No. With a growl, the branch genius responded, looking sideways to find the blonde with the whiskers by his side. What is it? Jealousy doesn't become you, Neji.san. The boy hissed, "What did you say?" and whipped to the other nin, dropping his grip on the rail. A nonchalant gaze met his silently burning one. "You heard me. If you're gonna be a bitch about it, why don't you turn that focus into a drive? Look at it as a means to get stronger, so you won't be left behind, that is. If you wish to also rebel against fate's place for you. What would you know? Fate has ordained you blessed, ever since birth. Having both my parents lost isn't what I would call blessed, Neji, and neither is having the childhood that I was raised in. I fought fate my entire life, and I continue to do so. You can't speak of fate if you've never made any effort to make your own destiny. Hinata, at least, I can give that credit to." Not that it bothered the blonde, but the young Hyuga's face was a frown that could have frozen an erupting volcano. The brunette grunted and turned back to the screen, but his mind was focused on something other than the match. Forest, futon, K's shuriken. The mist was quickly dispersed by a dozen wind blades that soared into it, until a clear area once again predominated beneath the canopy. The kunoichi looked around and leapt to her feet just as a hand ripped through the ground to seize her. Hinata gestured with her palm toward the hole, inserted another needle, and the poof of a bunchen appeared again. "Hokage. Sama. I thought you were gonna get serious. If this is it, I'm gonna get bored." Doden. Doryuden. From the muddy patch of earth from before, a dragon's head appeared and opened its mouth, launching shells of compacted mud at the female. She closed her eyes and started dancing, avoiding the attacks with a fluid style that included graceful slides, elegant spins, serene shifts from right to left, and quick turns. The old monkey nodded his head decisively as the move came to an end and emerged from behind a tree branch above her. I wouldn't want to bore you, now would I? You did very well dodging my last jutsu, it was very beautiful, Hinata." In response, she smirked and said, "Forgive me, Hokage. Sama, but this is where I get serious as well. Aim." The rain started to fall lightly as the two stood in their positions, and without a single seal, 4 clones appeared out of a puddle and abruptly disappeared. She blushed slightly at the praise. "Arigato." Sarutobi's eyebrows shot up in interest as he watched the entire display. "What are you planning?" As she disappeared from view, the blue net let the ninja stars fly while drawing a couple shuriken. The shinobi avoided the projectiles with a single leap, but he was unable to think about it. "Gotcha." The old cage turned in midair and saw the girl fall on him from above. He crossed his arms and braced himself. The youth's agility was on full display as she twisted into a series of kicks, slamming her opponent further down until a wall of earth shot up from the ground. She then contorted into a heel drop. Hinata landed beneath Hiruzen, who quickly adjusted and flipped into a crouch on top of the wall. He flew through several seals before being struck from behind. He righted himself, landed, and turned to confront his assailant. He was about to try again when he noticed Hinata on top of the wall when a jutsu was called out by another voice. Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. The monkey. User started to dash through signs, facing the direction of the attack, but was stopped again when a green seal materialized beneath him. What? The old ninja was thrown into the air with a splash as the attack connected, but he recovered his balance as he went down and landed in a stance. But right after that, he was frozen, which compelled a spoken reaction. "Nani?" He wasn't surprised when another blue-haired teenager entered his peripheral vision in a pose he was all too familiar with. The girl's clones started to appear as if they had just materialized out of thin air. If she's making this many clones, she's on par with Naruto. I had no idea she had this much chakra. What are you doing? Try saying, Hake-san hyaku hachiwion sho naite higyu, 5 times quickly. A dozen clones rained Jiyuken. Powered blow after blow at the Hokage, but the entire battle lasted only a few seconds. The old man was ultimately paralyzed and lay in a crumpled heap. The technique I just used was the combined result of experimenting and one of my own jutsu designs. I stumbled upon it while trying to make my own invisibility jutsu, she responded, standing over him. Rewind standing soaked from head to toe and struggling to breathe, Hinata hunched forward with her hands on her knees. What was that? Kura. Okami stood without emotion, but her smile gave her a friendly, light-hearted air. What do you mean? Dawn. Don't give me that. You. No. Good and well. What I'm talking about. Ah. Well, you did quite well for only having Master Seal. Less sweet and Bunshin, the goddess replied, nodding and sounding somewhat amused. Now, we can move on to the difficult subject. Nani. That wasn't the hard stuff. It took me forever just to get that special clone down. How am I gonna get the other technique when we only have another 6 hours left? The girl blushed as the goddess, kneeling in front of her, cupped her chin and kissed her forehead. Do not be worried, having mastered this specific clone is what is going to make the next jutsu all the easier. Since the human body is composed mostly of water, using Suiden jutsu is possible on a small scale. However, with your control over water, you could summon the water you need not just from your body, but from the moisture in the very air around you. With that, your clone have their own source of chakra, and they have a nearly unlimited source of water. As you can see, the uses are quite numerous, no? Yes, I get that. What I'm not getting is how I'm going to use water to become invisible. Gomen, but with you being immortal, it would be impossible to use this technique. Why is because even though most of your composition is that of water, you still have vital points such as your organs that cannot be converted into pure water. Not without a Kekkei Genkai at least, and because the shift occurs on a molecular level, if your body isn't designed to handle such a transformation it would kill you upon completion. She replied, oh, with a dejected expression on her face, but she soon got over it and expressed her opinion. So wait, if I can't use it, you're saying the clones can? Exactly. With their composition, they are perfect for the technique, as it would hide their presence and signature until they were directly upon an opponent. Also, it would appear as though you either were leaving after images or were simply appearing in those positions. A skilled eye could tell them as clones, but even then, you could do mass-scale jutsu quite easily since the clones have their own chakra and can sustain themselves. After that remark, Hinata's body went into overdrive, and she had the infamous Eureka moment, as she summoned 2 clones once more. Hinata, what are you thinking about? She asked. Hinata lowered themselves into the Jukenpo stance, saying, this, Hake Sanjuni show. Final flashback. The idea was that with the clones I made, I'd be able to create combination attacks that not many enemies would be able to escape. Given that they'd be trapped by invisible clones, and in keeping each clone's attack at the 30.2 palms, they'd still have chakra left over for a follow-up technique or a distraction if I needed one. The Hokage was astonished by the sheer profundity and inventiveness of it all. It was so Naruto. Like that, even by his status as Kami no Shinobi and professor, it could only be described as a brilliant move. The girl is undoubtedly a genius herself, considering that she developed such a potent set of abilities on her own. The proctor's mouth fell to the ground in shock as he dropped into the field and saw the Hyuga girl standing over the Hokage. The match has ended. Hyuga Hinata is the winner. Arena, what? The dead silence that followed the shout was universal as everyone processed what had just been revealed. One of the genin beat the Hokage. Viewing port, Naruto leaned against the railing and looked up at the sky, sighing, TCH. Damn Gigi, should have gotten serious from jump. Oh well, lesson learned. Indeed. I can't believe he didn't think her a threat. I mean, she trained with you, and by herself for a long amount of time. I don't think she was even close to going all out either. The blonde turned to face Mei and shook his head when he responded, you're right, even I sensed that. She wasn't trying till that last move, and she did some serious damage. Wonder if she'll fight me now. Keep it in your pants, Gaki. There'll be plenty of time to spar later. Booth. The defeat of their sensei by a girl 2 generations younger than him left Jiraiya and Tsunade in shock. The toad. Sage laughed to himself and remarked, wow, I can't believe she was holding back too. Me neither. I think that we really need to get back to training. No kidding, Tsunade. Just how strong are these kids? Was the common thought at the time. Although there were a few promotions during the week, The chain of command had not altered when the tournament results were announced a week later. The goal of every ninja in Konoha was to become more like the Konoha Neo Sannin by training hard. Since the three genin not only won the tournament but also managed to draw, or, in one instance, defeat, the top 3 shinobi in the entire village as genin, that title had been passed around by everyone. Saying they were unpopular would be like describing a swamp as dry land. Once word spread that he had trained Sakura, everyone wanted lessons, and poor Naruto had become like Sasuke in terms of the amount of fandom he was getting from his own generation. Tenten appeared to occasionally disappear as well, and Mei was even more difficult to locate for those who actively looked for her. However, dozens of shinobi would ambush Hinata every day in an attempt to attract the attention of the person who defeated the Hokage. Hokage Monument, the blonde, looking up at the sky above the fort's head, sighed and lay down on the grass. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to become unconscious, but when he woke up, he knew something was seriously amiss. Why in the world am I in a sewer? As the genin continued down the wet path, he came to a large room with a huge cage in front of him that had the word seal written in kanji on it. Whoa, that's not something you see every day. You're right, you don't. Who's there? Show yourself. Naruto looked around the room, but he saw nothing, and then he heard the voice from nowhere at once. He looked at the wall to his right, and that's where his focus remained. In front of him was a picture. A big picture of Konoha's leaf, a bigger picture of a katana, and a massive torii gate enclosing everything. He was about to touch it, mesmerized, when the voice spoke again. So, you finally show up, and your skill set is more interesting than the one who's been with you since the day you were born. Nice, Kit. The Uzumaki turned to face the cage, or rather, the cage's 2 enormous crimson eyes. Who? Wait, since the day I was born? Kyubi? Good. Glad you haven't forgotten me, I'd have punished you if you had. First my father, and now you. What do you want? I doubt you just wanted to talk me, the man said, shaking his head and sighing. With a small growl, the fox spoke again, you're right. I brought you here because we need to talk. You were given the ability to control fire. My natural element. Hell, you were given pyrokinesis, a power even I wasn't granted by Amaterasu. Dono. So, what, you just wanted to tell me that I got something you didn't. That's a bit odd, don't ya think? The blonde said, shrugging. Just a few inches from the boy's face, a red claw emerged from the shadows of the cell. Don't annoy me, brat. I was going to say that I was impressed by your strength, for a human anyway. However, for what you're going to be encountering in the days ahead, you're going to need to be stronger still, the Biju said, a slight smirk appearing on his face. Okay, so are you saying that you'll help me? The shinobi asked, blinking. Yes. I'll give you access to my chakra, seeing as that should give you an advantage of some kind, though you won't be able to use all of it. What? Why not? You better, because I don't have all of my chakra to begin with. Your idiot father sealed my other half within himself, so you won't be able to use all of my chakra, and even if I did have all of it, your body wouldn't be able to handle the poisonous nature of my chakra without some interesting changes. The blonde said, I see. Then, how many tails do you have access to? With a bewildered expression on her face. 4, but fortunately it's my chakra aspects. Meaning? It seemed to be laughing when the fox rumbled, you can use my cloak. And Foxfire. Foxfire? Yes, it is the last of the immortal flames, aside from Amaterasu's and White Fire. Its touch is as cold as ice, and it lasts for 3 days. Not as long as Amaterasu's 7-day span, or even White Fire's 5, but good enough, don't you think? Before he found his voice again, the genin was silent and only responded with a low whistle. Sugoi. Sounds pretty interesting, alright, so when do we get started? Later, you got company. We'll talk some other time, don't worry. The blonde spoke to his unidentified guest while remaining conscious and not opening his eyes. Ya know, it's not polite to sneak up on people, but we are in a shinobi village, so I digress. What is it that you want? Whoever was there gave a little gasp of surprise, but the blonde could tell by the tone of the voice that it was a woman. The voice reappeared after a brief silence, co-signing his opinions regarding the speaker's gender. I am here to inform you that Lord Hokage wishes to speak with you, Naruto. Sama. Naruto. Sama? The genin simply stands up and turns to face his messenger, a female Anbu with brown hair and a tortoise-shaped mask, noting the suffix. They both shunshined into the Hokage's tower hallway after nodding to her, and the Anbu vanished in yet another show of rapid fire movement after knocking on the door. Very impressive. For a female ninja, Kyubi, what the devil? Relax, kid, it's a mental rapport. This way, we can talk without you having to think about it every time. Or do you prefer to spend time in the sewers? The blonde's laughter was sufficient to make him simply roll his eyes and follow Sarutobi's voice, entering to find himself confronted by a perplexing scene. At the moment, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Hinata, and Mei stood in front of the cage's desk. Tsunade was the first to respond vocally, grinning slightly, saying, "Oh, so the brat's finally here. Oi, Gigi, having an office party?" "Hello Naruto-kun," the elderly man replied, grinning while coughing. "We're going over team placements. I've decided what the teams are to be and have been informing said teams all day," the Hokage continued, drawing in the attention of everyone in the room. "But, since your group is the last, I wish to cover something else entirely. Any guesses?" "Hi, if the three of us are here, and we qualified to battle you and the other two, could we be getting promoted?" the blonde asked, nodding and closing his eyes. Quirking an eyebrow, the elder ninja chuckled lightly. "Ever the observant one you are. That is the subject of this discussion, yes, but it is also about a mission that I feel requires your obviously restrained skills. As of now, you three are unofficial Chunin of the Leaf, yet we will have to postpone your promotion ceremony until the Chunin exams." Mei raised her hand into the air before asking, "Pardon, Hokage. Don't know, but may I ask why?" "Of course, Jiraiya." Leaning against a wall and folding his arms, the white-haired Sanin acknowledged his turn and responded, "I've received reports from my spy network informing me that Tsunade and I's old teammate, Orochimaru, is on the move. This brought everyone to full attention. It is said that he's joined up with our allies in Suna, and is planning to attack us sometime during the Chunin exams. I've also heard a rumor that he is after Sasuke Uchiha, though for what reason?" With a quick glance at Hinata, Naruto interrupted, saying, "Should be pretty obvious to every person in this room. He could be after the Sharingan, I mean with it and his legendary skills. He'd be hard-pressed to find an enemy he couldn't copy and then overpower," finished Mei, looking to her teacher with a look of dead seriousness on her face. The Toad Sage coughed and said, "Well, Sensei, you were right. These kids are good. More than even I know, Jiraiya," said old Sarutobi with a smile on his lips. He then turned back to Hokage mode and faced the three genin in front of him. "Now, the mission you three have is to observe and guard Sasuke Uchiha. Given the history that you all have with him, I believe you three will have little to no difficulty in completing this mission until the advent of the Chunin exams, correct?" he asked. "Gigi, you should really read the reports turned in to you. Sasuke and I hate each other, and," sneered Naruto, his arms folded across his breast. "It makes it all the easier to guard him, since he wants to know the source of your strength, and is constantly trying to find where it is you train so he can glean that information. There is an old saying, that one should keep their friends close, and their enemies closer. The same stands for you young Hinata. His attraction towards you will keep him by your side throughout the duration of this mission. As for Mei, she will be serving as Tokubetsu Chunin and leading the three of you." With an expression akin to a shark's after smelling blood in the water, Mei turned to her fellow bonded and said, "That aside, Sasuke is not to know you have been promoted. So, we have yet another mission that you shall be dealing with as genin of exceptional skill. Kakashi, come on in." This made both secret Chunin shudder. A tall, silver-haired man in a typical Junin vest and shinobi uniform caught the blonde's attention. He wore his Hite.8 over his left eye, and the longer he stared at him, the more he sensed a familiar aura emanating from him. After some time, someone said, "Geez, I didn't know you were gay, Blondie." The blonde appeared to have lost interest in the one-eyed man in front of him, and his eyes widened as he smirked and growled. "Wait, you mean he's on our team?" the elder shinobi said, coughing. "Well, let me start on why you all are here. Given all of your performances in the last tournament, I believe all of you capable of handling yourselves on a certain mission. I will have Mei here as leader, but for protection and assurance to our client I will have a Junin escorting you on said mission. It's nothing fancy, just a C-rank bodyguarding detail. I've been informed by the client that you shouldn't encounter anything more threatening than bandits as you escort them to Nami. Bring in Tazuna-san, please. A gray-haired old man walked in as the doors opened. His silver-rimmed glasses hung off his nose, and his glazed irises drunkenly surveyed the group in front of him. His clothes were more like rags than real ones, and they were a powdery gray color. What? I pay all that money, and all I get is a squad of brats playing dress up. None of these kids even look like ninja. Especially that little shrimpy blonde one with the sword. As Naruto spoke, a tiny gleam of mischievousness appeared in his eye, and all eyes turned to the described youth with a hint of trepidation. Ya know, it would be wise to keep one's thoughts to themselves. Click. Especially, if they insult the very people meant to protect you. The client went pale when he felt cold steel against his throat, and shocked expressions were observed when Sakura emerged from behind the man with her sword drawn and a sly smile on her face. Though the Pinkette's actions brought one thing to light, the old man was more than sufficiently sobered by the experience of coming dangerously close to death. Where was she from? Was the general way that most people in the room were thinking. With a Cheshire grin on her face, the jade-eyed girl simply walked over to stand next to a certain whiskered Hyuga while she sheathed her blade. Mind explaining what Sakura's doing here? Gigi? Naruto asked. Well, I'm here because I have a familial obligation. My family is sending me on an errand run in Wave, and I'm going to be going with my squad. So, I'll be acting as shinobi guide for you all in case Tazuna-san isn't feeling up to it for whatever reason or we get separated. That all right, Naruto? Sensei? The girl said, laughing as she interrupted the old flame shadows. The boy sighed in response, saying, Baka, forever making life difficult. You could have just said that when I first asked. As he hurriedly left the office, the silver-haired scarecrow said in a bored tone, well then, why don't you all go home to prepare for this trip? Pack what you can for about a month's travel, and meet back by the south gate in 20 minutes. Everyone who could immediately copied this action, leaving a frustrated Uchiha in a rage. The Hokage gave the boy a hearty laugh and said, Oh, Kakashi didn't teach you that, did he? Well, good luck on your mission. Now I'd get a move on if I were you. His only response was a growling, HN, as he saw the child with the raven hair dash out of the office and return to his compound. A state namikaze. As he went through a mental checklist, Naruto walked around his bedroom collecting the equipment he would need and putting it all in storage scrolls. In order to prepare for his journey beyond the walls of Konoha, he also changed his clothes. He wore black cargo pants with lots of pockets and a twin set of hook-crossing fabric around his legs. Think Ajito's black, colored, pocketed airgear pants. He wore a gray sleeveless vest with a hood on top, a long, sleeved white shirt that concealed his hands, and a black fishnet shirt underneath. The blonde thought out loud as he inspected himself in front of a mirror, wearing a pair of black shinobi sandals on his feet. I look pretty damn cool. Check your extra clothes. Check your gear. Check the fire and tent. I suppose I could leave my blade behind if we'll only be dealing with bandits. Well, whatever, I'll just keep them in case. He took out a smaller scroll, stuffed it in one of his pants pockets, and sealed his swords inside. After making sure he had everything he needed, he left his house and went to the meeting place. 20 minutes later, South Gate, as the blonde headed for the gates, everyone who needed to be there was there, including Kakashi. A woman he had never met before was standing next to him. She was dressed in a sort of battle dress that looked like white medical tape wrapped around her entire body, but had a single red sleeve on her right arm and what looked to be a black thorn pattern woven into it. She had painted her hands violet and manicured them, and they were free of the usual blistering that their profession was known to cause. She lacked a shuriken or kunai holster and her otherwise bare feet were covered by blue sandals, but the blonde's attention was drawn to one particular item. In addition to her shaggy black hair that appeared to reach the middle of her back, she had a single ring around her pupil and two glistening rubies for eyes. As deep as they were beautiful, those twin orbs of scarlet drew him in, and before he knew it, they were locked onto his body. Naruto. You awake? The young man, whose cheeks were a deep crimson, stumbled for a moment before finding his voice. Yay, what is it? He asked. Geez, you were spacing on us. What's a matter? You sick? No, I'm fine, I just had something on my mind is all. Running through my list, ya know. Fine. Just don't let it happen again. We're on a mission for crying out loud. The blonde nodded silently and trailed behind his blue-haired companion, conscious of a persistent stare on his person. I think that particular kid has all the makings of a mate, and I get the impression that she uses genjutsu. It's not as powerful as ours, but a fox must respect her chosen field by following in my kind's footsteps. Kyubi, Yurusei. In any case, what are you talking about? Try to treat her with a little more respect. She is a woman, not a partner. Oh ho. Gem. Eyed girls seem to be your thing. Alright, handle her however you see fit. Ninjin, I'll let you have her. At the two's approach, Kakashi spoke. Good, looks like we're all here. Now, for the sake of cooperation, I'd like to introduce to you all Yuhi Kurenai. She's a Junin specializing in genjutsu use, and this is her genin team. I'm sure you all know one another, so now that everything is covered, let's be on our way. Given that the group's walk was rather quiet, Naruto found himself talking to Kyubi more than anyone else. Only one or two questions were aimed at Sakura or Tazuna, and the groups mostly kept to themselves. But before long, the ninja with the sapphire eyes was the subject of a query. Uzumaki.san. I'm curious, how is that you got so powerful in so short a time? He turned to face the speaker and raised an eyebrow in silence, asking, What do you mean, Kurenai, sensei? I mean, based on your academy records, you were barely around average level for a shinobi. However, from your performance at the tournament, you far exceed even my skill level, Kurenai continued, locking eyes with Ruby and Cerulean. Every genin in the group gave this statement a startled look, and Tazuna even looked at the woman, realizing exactly what she had said. Wait, you mean to tell me that this kid is as strong as one of you elites? Ah, does this mean you're going to apologize for insulting us earlier? He's not the only strong one here, ya know, Sakura said sarcastically as she glared at the elderly bridge builder. With a clearly audible gulp, the elder nodded, I'm sorry if I offended you at all. Ya see, in my village the bridge I'm making is of the utmost importance. It will be the way out for our people to pull away from the tyrant ruling and ruining the land. By the end of his speech, the shinobi were resolved to go to Wave and kill the little bastard after Kakashi spoke up about Gatu and his company's vice grip on Nami's economic pulse and had Tazuna elaborate. And who's to say they wouldn't do exactly that? Nevertheless, while this was happening, very few people paid attention to the medium-sized pool of water on the ground as they went by. Fewer people immediately recognized what it was. They continued their journey with Kakashi slightly ahead of the group. The atmosphere was light as the groups started talking to each other, but everything stopped when a chain rattled and Kakashi was abruptly torn to pieces in front of everyone. Kakashi. Sensei. This was not supposed to occur. Wasn't he just there? What sort of creature? Does that? The black-clad pair in front of them responded with a laugh, saying, Hey, one down. 5 to go. 5? Hold on, that wasn't correct. There were only 5 people there to fight, it turned out. Sasuke was ready at the front, Shino was as composed as ever off to the right, and Sakura and Tazuna were as motionless as statues when you looked behind them. However, if you looked closely, you could see that the pinkhead was already on guard, her hand on the hilt of her sword. Just where in the hell was everybody else? Were they killed as well? Absolutely not. With a special Chunin and 2 Junin supporting them? That isn't feasible. What else could a person think when no one else was around to assist them? Kiba. Focus, we have an enemy incoming. When I snapped my eyes forward, I saw that the 2 murderers from earlier were indeed there, charging into the group. Anger soon replaced shock, and then anger turned into a desire for blood. Will they kill my comrades? After that, I'll tear them to shreds. He drew a kunai and threw it, hoping to will his anger forward to strike a crucial spot, as a feral growl lurched from his throat. The shinobi dodged beneath it, and it missed, but he paid for it when Sasuke's foot struck his chin. A hiss alerted him to Shino, who had hurled a pair of shuriken and kunai, both of which struck the chain between the 2 attackers. It caught the razor. Sharp metal and continued to extend it until it came to a stop at the base of a tree. Ikinasai, Kiba. The Inuzuka snarled viciously as he snatched out a pill and threw it at his partner, charging forward. The pup caught it in midair and, with a sudden burst of chakra, transformed into another Kiba. Without saying a word, the two of them started spinning in unison and launched themselves at the two ninja that Sasuke was occupying. Gatsuga. Crouching on the enemy's gauntlets, the raven-haired youth smirked as he sprang out of the way of the impending attack and gave them a mule kick to the face. However, in order to escape, the two nin also unchained themselves. This was a mistake, though, because as they moved, a series of fireballs the size of basketballs nearly struck them. They lost their balance as they evaded the jutsu, but that was all they needed to do before their worlds abruptly went dark. Well, this is a surprise. You all did really well, I'm proud of you. Nani? I thought you were dead? The once dead Kakashi was in front of them, putting their opponents in a headlock. The man smiled at them before speaking. Me? No, I just wanted to check something before, and I wouldn't have seen it if I was busy fighting them. Though, I'm curious, what was the rest of you all's reasons for leaving them? Naruto said, I saw no reason to fight two shinobi that Sakura could have beat in her sleep. Besides, the guys dealt with them pretty easily. The other, missing, materialized from their hiding places as one. My reasoning was the same as Kakashi's, though this was a test for my own genin just as much as his. I must say, I'm impressed that you all handled yourselves so well on your first real mission. However, Tazuna-san, we are going to have words later. Kurenai's strong tone sent a chill down the male's spines because it left no room for leniency and promised a great deal of pain. She spoke just after disappearing from thin air. Mei and Hinata emerged from opposite sides of the forest, praising the genin squad once more and citing essentially the same justification as the blonde who came before them. During this time, the team enjoyed their fame for what it was. However, this came to an end when Kiba approached the one-eyed scarecrow and gave him a clean jaw. The gang was shocked by the bestial boy's behavior, but Kakashi simply nodded and added, I won't, but right now we need to handle that wound. Otherwise you're going to die from being poisoned. He responded, breathing heavily, don't ever do that again. Kuso. That's what this was. It must have been laced on the chain they were using. How are we gonna do this? The Inuzuka swore as he looked down at his side. Taking the enemy shinobi with him, Kakashi simply shrugged and said, I think Kurenai can handle this a bit better than I can. I've got to have a little chat with our two friends here for a moment, but don't worry. I'll be back as soon as I'm finished. Everyone's gazes were on Kurenai as the woman coughed draw attention. Well, first things first, Kiba, you have to take your shirt off so I can properly remove the poison and dress the wound. Naruto, Mei, and Hinata, I need you all to make a perimeter until Kakashi comes back. And even then be on guard. With shinobi out here we can't be sure if it'll really be him or another attempted strike. Shino, Sasuke, and Sakura continue to safeguard Tazuna and err on the side of caution. Naruto called for a halt as everyone started to carry out their assigned tasks, looking behind them down the road. Hinata, Mei, where's Sasuke? He asked. As Mei said, he's just up and disappeared, and for the record, I vote to beat Sasuke to an inch of his life. And hang him by his balls from the nose of the third Hokage. Both girls approached him almost instantly. What? The little snot has always caused problems for you too. I figured you might enjoy a bit of payback, she said when they turned to face her. No, it'd be easier if we tied him up Bukaki style and then gagged him. He'd be less likely to move or use jutsu to escape, Hinata said, shaking her head. The blonde sighed and shook his head, saying, even if, that would be a great idea, I'm not trying to cause waves anytime soon. Yet, I have enough problems of my own as it is. I'll go get the prick, you guys let Kurenai know what's going on. But as Mei turned to face the red-eyed Junin, he jumped into the tree line and disappeared. Kurenai. Sensei, we have a problem. Where did Kakashi go with those two nin? Was the only thought on Sasuke's mind as he darted through the forest canopy. He was so preoccupied with his own thoughts that he didn't realize the shadow was moving toward his back until it was too late. With a puff of smoke and a little wave, Kakashi made his way back to his group and said, Yo. He was a little taken aback by the lack of response, but as he looked around, he saw something really, really wrong. Guys, where are Naruto and Sasuke? In response, Kurenai approached the masked Junin with trepidation and said, Naruto-san is out looking for Sasuke. He's searching with his clones and will be back shortly. Che. What happened? Mei spoke then. We don't know. 1 second Kurenai is giving orders. And the next thing we know Sasuke was up and moving in the direction we thought you had gone. Maybe he was following you, or rather, trying to. The silver-haired ninja sighed as he took a scroll out of his vest, bit his thumb, and then unraveled it, drawing a thin line on it. The group was later confronted with a package of sorts after a pop and small explosion, but he didn't stop there. He again flipped through hand signs before slamming his hands to the ground with a call of his technique. Kachiyose no Jutsu. As he explained what he needed, a group of dogs surrounded the scarecrow. When he was done, he gave them the package for a brief moment before they left. Before anyone could ask Kurenai to explain, he said, "What you just saw was a shinobi summoning. It is a very ancient and powerful technique that not a lot of ninja are capable of using." Kiba spoke his question while slightly holding his side. "Why not? I didn't see anything so special about what he did." The reason is because it requires a contract between shinobi and summoned creature, and even if one gained a contract, you then have to have the chakra necessary to power the jutsu. It calls your summon to you from an alternate dimension, and the stronger the summon, the higher the jutsu's chakra requirement. Most average ninja just don't have it their reserves to use such a costly technique, but it is that aspect that speaks for the strength and skill of the shinobi. As the puppy arrived at his master's, or pet's, depending on who you ask, feet, Kiba rubbed his head and grunted, "So, what, it's supposed to make you a better ninja? If that's the case, I'm gonna stick to what I know, right Akamaru?" He responded with a yip. Kiba probed with a small irritated growl as Mei's laughter drew attention to her as she hunched over and held herself. "Oi, what's so funny?" "Yuha, it's that. You say that, and it's pretty much how Naru, me, and Hinata ended up as strong as we are. Ahahaha." Following that statement, everyone watched Mei's outburst of laughter with wide-eyed stares. However, a shout of utter rage quickly broke the quiet. "Baka! Why would you go off telling how it is we gained our strength?" The switch was made instantly. Mei was standing right in front of Hinata, her voice as quiet as the grave, and she had stopped laughing. "Simple. Because in order for them to get anywhere near mine, they are going to have to take it, and no one is going to lay a finger on it as long as I breathe. What about you, Hinata? I know for a fact that Naruto shares my sentiments." Before she rebuked him, the girl stumbled a little. How came you even claim that? You don't know Naruto. You just came here and now you're trying to speak as though you've been around him his entire life, in which case, I have, she said. As she nodded and gave a brief laugh, the mahogany-haired Kunoichi said, "So that's what this was about. You staking your claim. Well, pardon me then, Heim, but you're gonna have a lot more competition to deal with as time goes on. Naru.kun is quite cute after all." Before she could respond, she had another stuttering fit. T. That's not it, I wasn't street T. Taking a claim, I was just saying that. Now, Heim. Chan. No need to get all worked up, if you want him, you're gonna have to fight for him is all I'm saying." The girl screamed, Urusai, Baka no Mei, at the other girl after becoming nearly neon red with agitation. "Girls, stop fighting like Academy fangirls here when we're on a mission. I expect better of you than that," Kurenai curtly yelled, clearly fed up. As they positioned themselves close to the Junin's sides, twin, hi, calls echoed. As she turned to face the elderly bridge builder, she noticed that his anxiety was growing. With a frustrated sigh, she got up and approached him. "Tazuna.san. We need to have that talk now." The man jumped a little when he heard the call, but his anger remained when he realized who it was. The elder took a gulp from his flask and composed himself enough to say, "Yeah, so what's on your mind?" Without missing a beat, the woman retorted, "Why have you been lying to us? This mission is above the average C rank by quite a bit with the involvement of shinobi, and it's too much for a genin team to handle normally on their own." He had been figured out, and Tazuna was in shock. The man's shoulders slumped as he started to retell his true story, explaining how Gato used up all of Wave's resources and how the C-rank pay was all he could afford. He would have kept going on a guilt trip had it not been for Sakura's intervention. "Yeah, no, for a rude old man, that's pretty admirable. I'm sure Naruto Sensei will agree, and if that's the case, you'll still have your protection. Once the guys get back with Sasuke, we'll have to be moving on, since we kinda have a limited window to get to my family's medical transport. Good luck with your bridge though." Taking another gulp of his sake, he sighed and said, "I'm getting too old for this." When Sasuke's eyes opened for the first time, they saw darkness. It was the same blank blackness that filled his vision wherever he looked. "Ah, he's awake. Good. Take the hood off." Shadow was almost instantly replaced by dazzling light as his vision returned. Where was he? His eyes were forced shut by the sting. "Well, tell us your name. Who are you guys? Where am I?" He gradually gave himself permission to look around after acclimating to the light. It appeared that he was still in the forest. As it turned out, they were only in a slit in the tree line, and it was directly above them, with plenty of open space, grass, and sunlight. A tuft of reddish gold hair confronted him directly as he raised his head, followed by a snow-white porcelain mask shaped like a fox, with a pair of emerald eyes blazing inside its eye slits. Even though she wasn't acting hostilely toward him, Sasuke was somewhat surprised by the intensity of her gaze and shuddered at the idea of her becoming agitated. "Tell us your name." "Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke." "Well, Uchiha-san. We are representatives for the Mishima Corporation. It is our duty to deal with certain targets of interest, and in this instance we need your assistance. So basically, you're glorified assassins. What do you want from me?" The Uchiha scoffed. A voice in his ear said, "I wouldn't speak so lightly if I were you. Boy, regardless of pleasantries, we are still killers, and I for one have no qualms with ending a stuck-up gaki like you." He flinched ever so slightly at the blade that appeared at his throat. The young genin simply h'd, after swallowing a dry gulp of air. "You are going to tell what you know of one Mibu Sakura. She is a kunoichi of Konoha, is she not?" said the other person in the room after the blade was taken away. "Mibu? Such a clan did not exist in the academy or in Konoha. Sakura? Wait, Sakura, they don't mean that? There's no such person as Mibu Sakura, but the only one I really know is Haruno Sakura, my old classmate. What do you want her for?" In response, the previous voice said, "That is classified. We are here to send a message, no more nor less. Kuni, knock him out, we've got enemy inbound." The two were silent for a moment. The raven-haired teenager was jerked out of consciousness again before he could make a sound. "Oh no. Where did that duck-ass bastard go from here? He can move when he wants to." He turned to see a figure land behind him, and an incoming presence reminded him of his missing teammate. When he saw a crop of silver hair, he relaxed from his tense attack. "Kakashi, glad to see you. I'm assuming you know what all has happened." He only nodded before a group of dogs sprinted overhead, and when he turned back to the Cyclops, he could only reply, "Let's get moving." Kakashi's nin dogs told him that the boy's scent was growing stronger and that it was directly in front of them, so 30 minutes of Junin-level travel had not been in vain. The man dismissed his summons, thanked him briefly, and turned to face his companion. "Naruto. I know that you are stronger than the average genin should be, but please let me handle the situation, whatever it may be." The teenager responded, "Sure. You're the shinobi in charge, but if it gets bad, I'm intervening," with a shrug. The two ninja reached a silent consensus and proceeded until they reached a sizable clearing among the trees. "Wow. You guys got here quick. I always figured Konoha was a bit slow on the uptake, but seems I was proven wrong," said Sasuke in a clearing where he was neither alone nor conscious. "What have you done to my student? If any harm has befallen him, you're as good as dead," the human scarecrow said as he sighed and landed in the open area. He then dropped into an offensive stance and drew a kunai. The one-eyed nin was unnerved by the two people's composure at the comment. A mocha with blonde hair cut in an odd way, a warrior's physicality, and a purple kimono embroidered with golden lightning designs stepped forward. A small shoulder pauldron held the man's clothing in place as he wore it off halfway. The man held a plain black katana in his hand, and both arms were adorned with metal-plated, fingerless gloves that reached the forearm. But his face was the feature that attracted the most attention. His eyes were completely hidden by sunglasses, but they couldn't cover up the two raging lines of scars that crossed into a X directly over his nose. "You have nothing to fear, Konoha.nin. We were merely asking the boy some questions." "Then why is he unconscious, if you just wanted to chat?" "Because he may cause problems if he were awake right now, and we couldn't have that, nay?" Two pairs of eyes looked at the other ninja, who had just stopped talking. In contrast to their partner, they were dressed simply, wearing a purple skin-tight bodysuit with a red vest and brown Chinese shoes. But a kitsune mask completely obscured her face, and a tiny yellow hair ribbon behind her held her reddish gold hair in a straight ponytail, resembling a tiny flame. Strangely enough, though, her eyes were actually gleaming behind the mask. Two fiery emeralds in the shadow of her porcelain face. A blade appeared out of nowhere and was placed almost tenderly against the sleeping youth's throat as she walked to the Uchiha's side, bending forward and resting her head on the boy's shoulder. He's sound asleep right now, and by the time we get out of here, he'll be wide awake for you. That is, if you allow us to leave right now. Otherwise, things may get a little complicated, nay? This abrupt change in character made the two shinobi stiffen, but Naruto grinned at the fox-faced Nin and said, I don't think that would be the problem here. It'd be that your friend would be fighting all alone, after you're dead. Eh? She looked down and felt the cool metal against her throat. Indeed, she was wearing a short sword blade. When did you? A shinobi doesn't reveal their skills, but if you let the teme go, I'll show you just this once. His response was a nod of consent, and both dropped their weapons at the same time. The blonde remained close to his teammate, blade already in its sheath, while the fox-masked Nin leapt to her partner's side. With a pop and a faint puff of smoke, the young shinobi by his leader vanished into thin air. A clone? The two strangers asked, a little taken aback. Yep, said the secret Chunin with a smile, go now before I decide not to let you walk. I am Raven, this is Kanamitsu. What are your names? The dark-skinned warrior said with a slight nod. As the scarecrow stepped forward, it responded, Kakashi Hitaki. This is my pupil, Uzumaki Naruto. HN. We will meet again, Hitaki.san, Uzumaki.san. The two then prepared to leap and just disappeared in a haze. Naruto. What the hell were you thinking? They could have killed Sasuke, and all because you were ignorant of my rules. If they were going to kill Duck.ass, they would have done so before we got there, and vanished like they did. I merely showed that we aren't some weak fools they can drag around using one of our own as a bargaining chip. Besides, it worked, so what's the issue? My issue is that you disobeyed a direct order, which was to let me handle it. I guess, but did I not tell you that I was going to intervene if it got out of hand? That could have become a blackmail situation had I not moved when I did. They could have taken Sasuke, and forced us to comply to some outrageous act. I stopped that from happening, and now, we at least can continue our mission. When the teme wakes up, he'll tell us what he knows, and then we can prepare for when they come back. It was clear that his blonde companion had planned this out in advance because Kakashi remained silent as he took in everything that had been said. Look, just make sure to follow my rules next time, alright? The man grunted in response. HN. No guarantees on that one. Kaka. Sensei. Raven, Kanamitsu. Report. All is well, she appears to be traveling to Wave Country to complete the transfer now. However, she is with a group of other strong shinobi. Should we engage? No, observe and keep close, we will have our opportunity. Hi. Is that all? For now. Wait. Master says he has one other objective. To monitor and engage one. Uzumaki Naruto. Report in when you have detailed information. As always, good luck. Sasuke woke up during the journey and insisted on being put down, but Kakashi and Naruto arrived at the camp quickly. Since they were already 3/4 of the way there, Naruto's statement that they had no idea whether he was internally injured and that they should wait until Kurenai checked him out put an end to the plan. The teenager with the raven hair reluctantly said nothing. Kurenai, I need you to do a quick medical scan, and I believe you've also spoken with Tazuna, correct? The ruby-eyed woman nodded, yes. His reasons were admirable in hindsight, but the decision is yours. Continue with the mission or go back. We've no choice really. Besides, if there are enemy shinobi involved, we don't know if they will allow you all to pass. Even though you aren't guarding Tazuna.san, who's to say they won't attack for the simple fact that you are Konoha shinobi? So, I suggest that we all stick together, at least until we reach the other side. Agreed? It's not my call. Sakura is the client. If we do go with this, we'll just have to rush a bit to get Sakura to her destination in time. Nothing sheer we can't handle. However, that's if she agrees. Alright. Sakura, could you come here for a minute? Sakura's group ran ahead and left in a rush of leaves. The others made the decision to start their journey as well, eager to make up for lost time. 2 hours would have gone by the time they arrived at the dock Tazuna had mentioned, giving the helmsman enough time to return to them following his excursion with Sakura. After giving Sakura's words some thought, Tazuna made the uncomfortable decision to ask his question. So, why are you all staying with me? You could have let me go on my own. Naruto was the one to respond saying, simple. The Hokage figured you were lying, but decided to go ahead with this mission anyway, because with the bridge operational it'll bolster our land's trade services a lot quicker than trying the unsafe method of carrying across boats. That, and I don't believe in allowing a corrupt bastard like Gadu to just do whatever he wants to a village. Especially if what you say he's been doing to women is true. I see. From that point on, the journey went smoothly because no one was truly paying attention because they were all thinking about other things. Tazuna, look out. The man was pushed away, and as he fell, he turned to see a piece of metal fly through the area where he had been standing just moments before. His eyes went wide in shock. That was actually intended for him, and he might have perished. Sasuke, Hinata, and Naruto cover him. May, on me. Whoever you are, come out now. 2 bodies materialized in a sudden movement, and Sasuke was immediately alert. You two again. Right in front of their path were Raven and Kunimitsu. We aren't here for you, Uchiha-san. Not this time. With his weapon in hand, the scarred man said, we're here for Uzumaki-san. Trees shook while shadows moved through the canopy and leaves dropped intermittently. As they proceeded, a dense fog gradually rolled in, obstructing their view of even the branches in front of them. Team 8's shinobi landed in crouches, and dust billowed as they fell. We're making good time, but who would have guessed Wave had such thick mist? Sensei, this is the first time I've ever seen mist this heavy while I've been here. The squad became aware of this statement, and they all tensed as their senses began to spread. The first to share his findings, Kiba said, this mist. There's chakra laced all throughout it. I can't smell where it's coming from directly. Their senses warned Sakura and Kurenai, and they both yelled, everybody down, as they tackled their teammates. An enormous blade appeared singing overhead not even a half-second later, poised to decapitate each of them had they stayed upright. A figure instantly phased into being on top of the handle in a display of perfect balance after the sword's trajectory landed it in the trunk of a large tree. The Junin's eyes widened in fear and amazement as she got a closer look at the man. Zabuza Momochi. The Demon of the Mist. A rank missing nin. Known as a master of the silent killing style, and one of Kiri's 7 swordsmen of the mist. What are you doing here? Hey, good to know my reputation precedes me. Yuhi Kurenai, Konoha's genjutsu mistress. I was here for the bridge builder, and seeing as you don't have him with you, I was gonna let you go. But, ya see, I've always wanted to fight a genjutsu user. Just to see how well they fight blind, and too bad for you, it's my lucky day. As she watched Zabuza fall from the tree and drag his sword with him, Kurenai drew a kunai. The man had a face covered in bandages, ashen black hair that stood spiked, and a height of easily over 6 feet. He wore arm warmers on his wrists that matched his pants in their camouflaged gray and white design, and he wore no shirt, exposing a toned midsection. He was identified as a nuke.nin by the long, deep gash across his forehead, which was held by his Kiri headband. Until a hand landed on her shoulder, the woman remained resolute in her resolve to defend her students. Sakura, get back. She said, quickly looking over her shoulder to see Sakura standing there. I'll fight him. Kurenai was taken aback when her student, a genin with above average power and skill, asked to engage in combat with a Junin missing.nin. She's not in her right mind. She couldn't possibly stand up to someone this strong. Just as she was about to say something, she was interrupted. Look, sensei. You're not prepared to fight this type of enemy. The fact of the matter is that with this mist up, you will be fighting blind, that and since it's laced with his chakra. You'd have to push twice as much chakra into your techniques for them to even reach his system. That doesn't even guarantee a solid hold that can't break instantly. As such, you'd suffer from chakra exhaustion long before this fight ended, and I'd be stuck facing him anyway to make sure, pointing a dainty finger towards her 2 teammates, these 2 are safe. At least, this way, If I fail we can have him tired and have a Junin looking out for any extra attacks from outside forces. Besides, my reserves and skill set are much more suited to this type of fighting. Plus, Tenro is singing for a little blood right now. She strided forward, retrieved a red piece of cloth from her hite-aid and tied the item to her throat. Her statement, "Why does that name sound familiar?" confused Zabuza a little. She moved into a ready stance as she and Zabuza got close. "Momochi Zabuza, I want you to remember this fight well because it is the first time in centuries that Amiibo has used Tenro in combat," she said, her hand lightly touching the handle of her blade. "Miibu." Everyone in the room watched in riveting wonder as the girl withdrew her weapon from its sheath, their eyes widening. "Naruto." The blonde unrolled a scroll, called forth his daisho, and placed them on his left hip. "I want no interference, from any of you. Also, I wish to warn you too. If either of you don't intend to kill me, walk away now. This is your first and last warning. It's okay, I wasn't expecting them to retaliate so soon, but I can't say I'm surprised." As the Pinkette finished her graceful move, the world appeared to grow darker around them, with ki and chakra leaking into noticeable amounts of amber hue. As the world twisted into visual static and the kunoichi's own face changed, gravity seemed to visibly double its push against those in attendance. Pink gradually turned to silver, then black. Meanwhile, all that was left of the former her was two pink bangs. She gazed evilly at the man in front of her, her once bright jade eyes turning into vile red orbs. Next to her face, the blade rose from its scabbard to the air, ringing with the pitch of a death knell. Her change was, to put it mildly, startling. "How are you feeling? Is this Sakura? She smells like a totally different person, and it's so intense. What the hell happened to her? It's unbelievable that this Gaki truly has a greater desire to kill than I do. However, I also believe that the Miibu had been wiped out. This is going to be enjoyable." Sakura. Naruto trained her. Though somewhat smaller, this dark chakra is remarkably similar to his. Later, I'll have to pay closer attention to this. Did she hold back during the competition? It somewhat resembles the Kyuubi's chakra, albeit weaker, so why didn't she use it against Mei? What kind of summon gives its bearer this kind of power? "Well, Zabuza, shall we dance?" Uzumaki-san. "I'm afraid leaving is not an available option at the moment." The young man grunted and reached for his wakazashi's hilt. "All right, your funeral." "Wait, I thought you were after Sakura? Why the sudden interest in the dobi?" Sasuke interrupted. The fox masked person was the first to say, "What's it to ya, Uchiha-kun? A little jealous we aren't sharing you? That's so cute." Before his sensei placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Don't let them goad you, and what's this about them wanting Sakura?" The boy growled in anger at the statement. Raven spoke then. He was supposed to pass along a message, but it seems he did not accomplish his task. "In any case, our priority now is Uzumaki-san here." Drawing his sword, the disguised genin closed his eyes and said, "Do me a favor, at least make this interesting." The clearing echoed with the painfully loud screech of metal on metal. Every time they clashed, sparks danced wildly, and the joy felt by both warriors was like outward ecstasy. They get closer and deeper into the tides of battle with each swing, parry, and near miss. The display in front of them captivated the others. Haiden Ninpo. Shizuka Suiga. The mist abruptly dissipated, and the entire scene was now visible. Everyone was shocked by the condition of the fighters themselves, even though the area was a war zone with pieces of earth ripped from the ground and various slices of debris scattered throughout the area and surrounding trees. Sakura was alive and well, albeit a little worn down. Even though he was a little ruffled and sporting a look of complete shock, Zabuza was fine too. What? What did you do? The new Miibu grinned and sheathed her katana. She charged forward, avoiding a heavy mule kick aimed at her head and lunging with a high vertical snap kick that the swordsman sidestepped. With Zabuza hot on her heels and swinging his sword downward, she managed to get some breathing room with a back handspring. She dodged the slice by tucking into an aerial as soon as she landed, but she could still feel the wind from the blade as it crashed into where she had been. The target's forearm blocked her right leg's retaliatory flying reverse roundhouse, but she used her remaining momentum to roll into a rising upswing while drawing her sword once more. Kenton. Kirikawa. When Zabuza blinked, he he was instantly torn apart and thrown into a puddle of murky water. Mizu Bunshin, damn you. I guess it won't work to fight him on his terms. I gotta say, I'm enjoying myself Gaki. Didn't think anyone your age could still have what it takes to be called a ninja anymore. With that last jutsu you used. Guess I should take the kitty gloves off now, huh? Turning to face him, the black-haired Mibu gave an animalistic grin. By all means, I'm having a blast right now. Alright. Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. A giant dragon of water rippled up from the lake a few feet to her right, and she fled, shuriken, watching the man in front of her fade into a puddle. She swiftly whipped through seals, swapped herself out for a sliced branch far away, and was moving again as metal blades swung at her body. Normally, the sound option was blocking, correct? Not when an explosive note's burning tail is directly in front of you, that is. She leapt away and landed on the lake's surface in a sliding crouch, but her gut told her that something was seriously wrong. What's causing the water to feel heavy? Got ya now, Mibu. Kuso. All that was visible were three blurs, quick bursts of sparks, and the sounds of metal objecting to another as a draw would take place. It was breathtaking. It's so quick that I feel like I'm witnessing Guy battle again. Amazing. During the battle, three crimson orbs darted around, Sharingan eyes frantically trying to catch a glimpse of anything interesting or useful from those fighting. One set in particular spun quickly, with a hint of jealous rage at its most recent discoveries. Nothing. How can my eyes see nothing at all? Is their pace too rapid for even the Sharingan to imitate? Or perhaps, no, I'm not weak enough yet in any way. Is there? All three of them abruptly separated, each in varying degrees of caution. I'm surprised. I didn't think you'd pose that much of a challenge. Guess I was wrong. Won't make that mistake again, Dadbeo. The dark-skinned man held out his palm and said, Raven. Wait. We've already learned what we need to. We'll be in touch, Uzumaki-san. He put his blade back into its sheath. What, you mean this was some sort of test? Are you kidding me? You bastards, the blonde youth charged, reaching for his other weapon. However, they vanished from view before he could go even half the way. Their wake is a graceful fall of leaves. TCH. When I see them again, there's gonna be hell to pay.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.